Housing and Environment Services Committee today, Tuesday the 9th of July. Sederunt apologies first thing. Derek?
Morning, Chairman. Thank you. I have apologies from Councillor Geddes, Councillor Hislop and Councillor Wood. There are 15 members present.
Thanks very much for that.
Councillor Nicholson's at the meeting with Education will be here fairly soon, I think.
Councillor Nicholson will be here shortly. Okay, thanks for that. Declarations of interest. Anyone got any declarations of interest? Councillor Collins?
Of the GoSmart programme, due to my membership of Sederunt, but I don't intend leaving the meeting.
Same, Chairman.
Same with myself, Derek, for that, please. Thank you. Same with Councillor Diggle. Yep. Anybody else got any other declarations of interest? No. Okay. 2 minutes here to note. Item 3 and 4. They've been to full council already. We're just back here to note. It's not explicit within the actual report there, but it is. They're just to note. So item 5. Oh, that's one other thing. We'll have one small urgent item of business. I'll take it under any other competent business. So we'll pick up on that at that point. Item 5, financial items, Plan and Environment Services Budget 2013-14 report by our Director. Over to you, Alistair.
Thank you very much, Chair, and a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My hay fever has caught up with me this morning. It's extremely warm and my body temperature is very high, so if I croak and sneeze, please forgive me, but I'll try and get through this without that. Attached to this report is the ABB for Planning and Environment Services, and that's Appendix 2, and Appendix 1 is the budget process 2014-15 as previously agreed. The ABB itself, Planning and Environment Services, has a net controllable budget for 13-14 of 32,117,304, and that controllable budget is dispersed and set out over the 6 functional business units within the department. And throughout the ABB, each of these functional business units explain their resource, their budget, and the service that they deliver. As well as the net controllable budget, this committee, Planning, Housing, Environment Services Committee, is responsible for a number of strategic commissions, and these are detailed on page 31 of the ABB. That's 3 pages in. So that means that the total budget responsibility for the Planning, Housing, Environment Services Committee is £54.215 million. The expenditure details for the department, 24% of the expenditure is on staff costs, 6% is on support costs, and 70% is on payments to other bodies. There is obviously income, and that is at 4.66 million. So the total expenditure is 36.77 million, income of 4.66, which gives the controllable budget at 32.117. The staff resource is 300, and that again is dispersed through the 6 functional business elements. That represents 5% of the council's workforce. The various bands that the staff are paid at, 90% staff are in bands 1 to 12, 8% 13 to 15, that's service managers, and heads of service 1.5%, and the director is 0.5%, so 10% approximately on management costs. We're currently carrying 10 vacancies, and that amounts to salary and on costs of about £250,000. As you go through the ABB, you can see the staff resource quite easily identified in each of the functional units. Staff carry out a range of duties which involve statutory, that's duty and obligations, non-statutory and discretionary, but the majority is statutory, as planning environment services contains many of the statutory authorities that the council is responsible for example, planning, waste, roads, flood risk, trading standards, environmental health, building standards, housing, transport, hardware, etc. And that list is not exhaustive. The 6% support costs, they're basically spread over property costs, transport costs, and supplies and services. And again, as well as being detailed in the overall budget, they are detailed for each of the 6 functional elements. 69% of that 2.22 million is controllable. And what I mean by that, there are non-controllable costs that we have to pay, and these include insurance, rates, water rates, repairs and maintenance, and bank charges, etc. And again, that's not exhaustive, that list. Payments to other bodies, there's right at the back of the ABB, on page, it's an appendix actually, it's appendix 2, page 64. There's an analysis of payments to other bodies, and that represents 70% of our expenditure. Now, the interesting thing about that 70% of expenditure is 97% of that total is committed. And what I mean by committed, it's either paid through contract or commission or on agency payments. For example, agency payments, I mean there is £360,000 that we pay for the carbon reduction commitments. That's what I mean by agency payments. So that £25 million, 97% is committed on that basis. On the income side, there's 4.66 million income, as I said before, and again, that's distributed quite clearly to each of the functional units across the department, and that's clear in the various pages of the ABB. In recent years, as a result of the economic downturn, planning and building standards income has substantially decreased, and the deficit for 12-13 was £450,000. As a management team, we have worked very hard to balance the department's outturn, and as a result of that, once again, the 12-13 outturn, and that's a parallel report to this committee, we are delivering a balanced budget and just coming in under the budget at minus £44,000 underspend. Looking forward, planning fees were increased on the 1st of April, and these now they were increased by 20%. However, at the same level of activity, if we get the same level of activity in applications, that will still leave us with a deficit of some £78,000 going forward. Any improvement in building standards income will depend on the level of activity. So we're very hopeful that the economy will turn round and that income will increase. And there are signs of that. In the very recent quarter, there was some encouraging signs that that might be improving. Again, at the very back of the ABB, there is an analysis of income across the department, and that's on page 67. So really, I don't have very much more to say about the ABB. It's a document it's in its second generation. When we look at future reports on the agenda, the service reviews, it's our intention as a management team to take that ABB to another level and give far more detail in the service reviews that we're going to deliver. And I describe it as a manual so that members have a detailed manual of every function, every detail, and every expenditure and resource that exists in PES, and that will help inform budget decisions, budget information for members going forward. So happy to take any questions. I do have a number of my colleagues here today. They're very interested to hear the debate and obviously contribute when required. So thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your presentation, Alistair. We've covered 2.1, which is the presentation. I've asked for the door to be left open today just for everybody's information in regards to creating a through draft. Keep everybody cool. I see people looking at the door there and that's why it's open. 2.2, we've covered 2.1, is to review and agree the Plan and Environment Service budget for 2013-14 as detailed at Appendix 2. So, do you have any questions in regards to that? Councillor Dempster, you're first.
Thanks, Chair. I presume it's just it is accurate, but we appear to have 30 fire appliances at the 31st of March. I presume they transferred to the Scottish Fire Service on the 1st of April. On page 56.
Page 56, and you're talking about
And
35
Integrated
appliances.
Transport and Commissioning, that it lists the fleet we have, and in that list, as of the 31st of March, we have 30 fire appliances. Now, we presume we shouldn't have only new, because the 1st of April should have it gone to the Scottish Fire Service. On the taxi card scheme, which is on page 54, I know there are 3 new taxi companies have started operating recently in my ward, and I just hope that we offer them the opportunity to engage with us in the taxi card scheme. It may well be that they don't want to, but it would be helpful to know that they've been made aware that such a scheme exists, because I think everywhere, if you can access transport and you're severely disabled, you should have the opportunity to do so. So I know we have engaged in the past with existing, but I'm just hoping that when new companies register with the council, that somehow they're made aware that this scheme is available. On page 38, and again, it's nothing more than housekeeping, but it's on economic development, and on page 38, the bottom of the second box, it says we have 2 workstations at Sanker Town Hall. I wouldn't want only, there are huge concerns about the future of Sanker Town Hall. The 2 workstations that Economic Development have are at 100 High Street, the Customer Services Centre. There are also workstations in the community centre, but Sanker Town Hall has no workstations, and I wouldn't want that to arrive in the public domain, because it might cause some concern. It's not actually accurate. As I say, it's nothing more than housekeeping. The workstations are there, staff work from them, it's just no in Sanker Town Hall. And lastly, strategic projects. John Simon and I have been waiting for a year now for some information to come forward about how we might develop an economic development strategy for Upper Nithsdale, especially at the loss of after the loss of the open cast coal mining that has now collapsed completely in Scotland. This happened in September last year, and we've been given assurances from time to time that work's being done in conjunction with the East Ayrshire Council. I'm sure it is, but we've just not seen any evidence of that, and it would be useful to get, if no, some way forward, an interim report on where we are with trying to develop that, because we just can't leave a whole area bereft of support and wait indefinitely for some report or indication of where we're going in terms of offering support to that community there. And as a throwaway line, the countryside element of page 36, the access team is responsible for the development and delivery of the capital investment for core path plans and access projects to support the enhancement of key access routes across the region. I'm finding that, and I'm working with staff in the access team, but I'm finding that there is no maintenance, and we've always talked about there not being a budget for maintenance of core paths. There should be, and if there's no, we need to address that somehow. So I'm working with staff. It's no criticism of staff. We need to sort out how we deal with the core paths plan and how we deal with routine maintenance, because this is the middle of July nearly, and there are some paths haven't been cut yet. And I know we work with criminal justice team to deliver that, but we need to have a document that shows members when they're being dealt with, what's being done, and how we're going to develop an ongoing maintenance regime and upgrade regime. And that's across the whole region. It doesn't matter where it is. But certainly I've noticed that the core paths are not being cut on a regular basis, and I think that's a failing given that we've set up the core paths, we put it in the public domain, and we encourage folk to go there. We have to make them accessible when they actually arrive.
Thanks for your points here, Councillor Dempster. I'll put it over to you, Alistair. I think it's different officers may be involved in that.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and answer these and where we need assistance. I think on the appliances, I think the note says that was the number of appliances as of the 31st of March. Do you want to add anything to that, Harry? On the economic strategy for Upper Nithsdale, absolutely acknowledge that. We are doing work with East Ayrshire. It was the intention to come with a joint strategy report with East Ayrshire to the full council on the 19th of July. Unfortunately, working with East Ayrshire, it's been decided to present that to members after the recess. So you'll get that after recess, and apologies for that delay, but we are working together to pull together that paper. So we'll get that after the summer recess. On the mines, Hargreaves, I'm working very closely with Hargreaves, who are taking over the Glen Mucklock operation, and I've had a number of meetings and telephone calls with them. It looks as if they are going to take over operations, which is good news, and I think there was some announcement about that at the weekend. The core paths, there was money allocated, and members of this committee agreed on the 13th of March allocations to core path as far as that asset class was concerned. And I think that covers as much. And again, on the maintenance and the maintenance regime, yes, we'll look at that, and I'll get somebody to advise you what that is.
Just for future, I think as far as the core pass, the administration's budget consider, I think it's put an extra 500k for the next 2 years thereafter. 220 this year, and it was 500 thereafter for the core pass. But you want to come back in?
Just very briefly, and as I've been working with members of staff, and I realise there are issues about that. I just think we need to deal with this properly. We need to have a plan, and that's why we know just dotted the I's and crossed the T's yet. And on Hargreaves, I know, and I work closely with Buccleuch Estates, and they've been very positive in the description of their workings with Dumfries and Galloway Council, which is helpful, that they are of the opinion that we're working closely, or they're working closely with Dumfries and Galloway Council to get a solution to the Glen Mucklock in particular. I'm aware, and I'm sure Alistair is, and I know members of staff have been working with it. I just find it challenging when we don't get any information at all that there is a plan to develop a scheme to deal with the issues in Upper Nithsdale. I'm pleased with that.
George, you're next. Councillor Prentice.
Thanks, Chair. Just on the core pass, would it be possible maybe to get a sort of breakdown on the lengths of the core paths in each of the areas, so that we know roughly how much per mile or per kilometre is going to be spent in maintaining these core paths? I mean, when we say, I don't know what the figure is, I don't remember what the total figure is, but it doesn't mean very much unless we know what the length of the core paths are that we're actually going to be maintaining. I'm just wondering if that would be possible to have.
Is it just Stuart that you're looking for? Is it the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, the 4 regions, 4 areas, sorry?
Chair, just whatever would be the easiest way to do. I would like basically to know how many pounds, shillings and pence, or how many pounds and pence we're actually going to be spending on a mile or on a kilometre or whatever. Whatever is the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, I'll certainly get that for you and circulate that to all members. Again, the core path network, and I say network, just like our local roads network, it's a new network, and we want to develop the data that we have on our roads network. We want to develop parallel data to give members and the public the fullest information.
Thank you for that. The members coming up. Points. Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Chair. Over the last 2 or 3 years, the amount of money we pay for the Waste PFI project was quite consistent, about 10.7 million, but obviously this year it's gone up to 10.9 million. That's sort of gone from 33% of the department's budget up to 34%. Can you remind us just what was the reason for that increase again? And you mentioned earlier, Alistair, that 97% of the payments to outside bodies or other organisations is committed. What do you mean by committed? Is that long-term contracts? Is that short-term contracts? And one of the biggest frustrations we had in the budget last year from the administration was the very ad hoc way they dealt with payments to outside bodies from this department, and effectively singled out initially 2 organisations to have a funding cut, and then ultimately only 1 organisation, which was Welfare Rights, to receive a funding cut, which in the run-up to welfare reform was madness, to say the least. But that was a very ad hoc cut, and it actually came back to bite us in the hand, because frankly we gave them no notice at all of this cut. They made a formal complaint against the council. That complaint was upheld, and we had to pay compensation because of the lack of notice to that organisation. And what concerns me is that we can't go through another process where we make ad hoc changes to grants to outside bodies. So I'd be keen to know what the commissioning timetable is for the department, when they're actually going to look at these. These things need to be looked at in a strategic way, rather than just simply saying, right, we're going to pick that organisation and we're going to cut their funding. So what exactly is the commissioning timetable for these payments to outside organisations, and what do you mean by 97% is committed?
Right, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Smith, for these questions. If I could just address the waste PFI. First of all, in a parallel report on performance, there is an exception report about the net cost of refuse disposal, and in there we explain that these costs are higher than anticipated because of insurance costs. We did pay 2 premiums in 1 year, and that increased our costs. Higher contract inflation, and a lower diversion performance than expected by Shanks. What I'm saying there, they did meet their contract performance levels, but we are encouraging them to divert as much as possible, and therefore we had higher landfill tax costs than expected. So that added up to that increase. And what we also have to remember is landfill tax is increasing by £8 a tonne each year. So it's currently at £72 a tonne, and at one time it was at £15 a tonne, and there is an escalator there that we have to pay through the contract, and that increases costs each year, but that's balanced out by us increasing the diversion of waste away from landfill. As far as long-term or short-term contracts are concerned, the waste PFI has another 18 years to run, and 10 million of that 25 million is involved in that contract. There are other large sums of money associated with local bus services, which be passed through to Westrans, and these contracts run on an average for 5 to 7 years. And there's another large sum of money which is for the school transport contracts, and again they're 5 or 7 year, 5 year contracts. So that, as an example, that's some of the larger sums. Regarding the payments under the housing support, I'll ask John just to comment on that. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of the housing support contracts, there's essentially kind of 3-phase process of commissioning. The first phase of commissioning was undertaken last year, and that related to accommodation-based generic housing support, and that commissioning process was completed, and the new projects were up and running from April of this year. In terms of phase 2, the Commission will be looking at outreach specialist housing support. That is under review pending clarification of the total Commission budget that we have, which is obviously part of the budget development considerations. So as soon as we've got clarity about what the total budget is that we'll have to commission, then we'll go forward with those new commission services. The third element relates to the provision of support through the sheltered housing schemes, and that's going to be a slightly different approach because they obviously underpin a lot of the housing association network of sheltered housing projects. You essentially pay for the warden service plus related services, so we need to deal with that in a slightly different way, and what we're doing there is looking at a sectoral review in conjunction with health and social work services, and that'll be the third phase. So we're just about to, we'll be ready to move on the second phase commission once we've established the commission budget. I think that's the current position. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that. I think on the back of your question, Councillor Smith, I was going to raise it in the next item, but I think it's a valid question, and I'll just ask the Director, when the service reviews come forward, will that level of information be contained within them? when contracts would naturally expire and so on.
Absolutely, and there'll also be options as to how we might handle these contracts going forward to address savings that are required.
A good point, Chairman. I think it's sort of information would be helpful in even in the ABB documents, because all you get is a list of grants to outside bodies, but it's never entirely clear to me how long those contracts are for, which have actually been commissioned, because some of them, a lot of them haven't even been commissioned, they've just been historic payments that have been made, that have been there for a period of time basis. It would be good to have that level of information within the document.
Thank you for that. Anybody else got any other questions? There's no hands up. Go back to the recommendations. As we covered 2.1, I think 2.2 we've covered that as well. Okay, thank you very much, Derek. Okay, item number 6 is the service review for Plan and Environment Services. Director, do you have anything to add to this?
Nothing to add at this stage, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much for that. It's open to members. 2.1 is asking us to review and agree the detailed scope of the service reviews attached as appendices 1 to 6. So, look for hands to go up. Councillor Dempster.
Appendix 1, Chair, and it would appear that as far as commissioning is concerned, we don't envisage increasing the budget on any of the services that we commission on page 73. And one that springs readily to mind on the bottom chart is burial grounds and interment. And if you go to the page, to page 74, planned outcomes from the review, the second bullet point near the bottom of the page, clearly demonstrate value for money in both cost and quality. Now, we increase the charges to families annually for interment. We've been quite savage recently in the increases, and yet we don't increase the standard that we expect from the burial grounds and services. And I presume this will be things like grass cutting, maintenance. And you can't expect in 2 or 3 years from now to be standing still. This will be a reduction in service at a time when you're increasing costs. And I would have thought there had been a built-in increase, even if it's just to cover salary costs, because within 3 years, I would presume, we'll be offering the staff a salary increase. So therefore, the cost should be reflected in that by an increase in the commissioning that we pay for the work.
Well, I think Councillor Dempster's it's a statement he's making about the potential increase. At the moment, these are the budgets that are associated with the commissions, and these have been approved by committee, because these commissions have been presented to committee, and these levels of budgets have been approved. Now, when we carry out the service reviews in P&E, we will not be carrying out a service review of each of these commissions, because the commissions and how the commissions deliver is very much an issue for our delivery partner, DG First. But we have to make savings in these commissions rather than increasing them. And I will be working very closely with the Director of DG First to identify savings to bring forward for members' consideration. And again, any charges to our customers right across the council for all services, again, that's something that we will consider in each of the service reviews, and I'm sure it's something that the council needs to consider corporately, whether it wants to have an inflationary increase in charges in general or not, and that's just another decision that we have to make through the budget process.
Thanks, Chair. Just briefly, I can understand that winter service, we commission the work and we pay for that work, and we determine what level of service we get for that work. And I realise that will be determined by weather, apart from anything else, that particular one. But the burial grounds is different. We charge people. We draw money from people. And in respect to that, I would suggest they deserve a level of service to be returned. And if we increase charges, we should increase the standard of the service that we provide for burial grounds. A very emotive subject. I don't want to dwell on it. I want you to note that it's different, and we should look upon it where we're drawing money in from the general public to provide a service, we shouldn't be looking to reduce that service. We're charging them extra, therefore that service should be maintained at a given standard, whatever that standard might be.
Thanks, that comes to them. So I think everybody would agree. One of the points I picked up on, it kind of ties along with that. In the body of the initial report, top of page 71, it refers to paragraph 4 where it's planned outcomes from the review, and it says review all income streams to ensure they are maximised. I put wording on the end of that, and I will put it to the committee, but it's right at this time. We mentioned that added at the end of that without causing significant detriment to the local economy, and probably could pick up as that being a point as well, because I think that's important. Because any increase could be argued. Any increase in fees could be argued that you'd have a detriment to the local economy, but improvements of service, or at least maintaining that service, is absolutely essential. I think maybe we could pick up at that point and include it in there, but we'll see what other members are coming along with as well. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question on the single challenge panel. This involvement we have from independent representation, is that independent of the service? Is it independent of the council? That's the first part of it.
I would certainly like it to be independent of the council. It could be independent of the service. Again, this is a new toolkit, and this is guidance that's in the toolkit that members approved. I'm certainly looking at it at the moment as independent of the council, and I've contacted the improvement service to see if they can give me an appropriate person that can sit on the challenge panel.
Just on that, I mean, it's not unique to the service that's happening, and I'm going to use the dreaded word consultants coming in, and the cost of the consultants, and how much is actually passed for this type of consultancy to get the independent representation.
So the improvement service advise COSLA and councils in general. I haven't discussed if that's going to be any cost as yet, and that's something I can advise members of further in due course. The other options for me are to approach a director who has similar responsibilities in another council, but again, diaries are difficult, and what we're taking on here are 5 service reviews, and that challenge panel will have to look at these 5. So there's going to be a number of dates in the diary to do that, and it's just getting the best fix of an independent person. I've also considered maybe professionals who have retired from the council, maybe taking that role, but that's something that I'm considering. But at this stage, as I said, Councillor Nicholson, I was hoping it would be independent to give the best sort of challenge.
I think it would be helpful if you give members an idea of the costs of that if and when you make the decision.
Certainly, Chair, I'll make sure that's the case.
Okay, thank you for that. No other hands up at the moment. It's all right. Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I think it goes without saying that Labour very much support this approach. We've been pushing for a more fundamental look at the budgets and service reviews for some time, that it shouldn't just be about tweaking cuts at the edge, it should actually be about looking at how we spend the money, and that's why we're keen to see service reviews being undertaken. I think it's also interesting that the department has actually gone for a service review of every single part of the department. I think that when we see some of them elsewhere, it may be that it's only parts of the department that are being looked at, so it's interesting to see that you've chosen to go for a review of everything, frankly, and that's obviously quite a substantial undertaking. We welcome the fact that the process itself has been clarified a bit more in terms of the review teams, in particular the inclusion of trade union representatives and key members of staff, and that's been quite specific. I think that's important. I think certainly when we speak to staff on a regular basis, they tell us, well, if you ask us, we might come up with some ideas, and I think that's absolutely crucial. What I'm interested in is when we do get the final reports, you'll provide options, obviously, for 5%, 10%, 20% savings. Will the reports also provide options for changes within the service, redirection of funding, if you like, not just making a cut here and there, but actually redirecting particular funds But I think that's quite important. I mean, certainly Labour Group's point of view is things like job creation, economic development. These areas are what we regard as the priorities, and we would like to see, as we develop our budget process, a direction of funds towards job creation schemes being a higher priority for the department. So we would be keen to see within the service reviews options for redirection of existing funds, not just the 5 and 10% savings. And I know you mentioned that when it comes to the commissions, it's not about trying to increase the commissions, but there are still anomalies out there that do need to be tackled. I mean, a simple one is that the huge amount of money that this council and Strands spend on bus shelters, but we don't spend any money on actually cleaning the bus shelters, you know, so the new bus shelters are now looking dated simply because, frankly, nobody cleans them. And so minor changes to those sorts of areas, I think, are still important. So I appreciate what you say. It's not about increasing commissions, but if we're going to keep spending money on new things, then we need to maintain those new things, quite frankly. We're not very good at that. We spend a lot of money on capital, but we don't actually direct the revenue towards them. And I think bus shelters are the prime example. I mean, I always thought there were glass roofs on the new bus shelters, but it turns out they're actually green roofs if they're under a tree because they've never been washed for years. So I still think it's important to look at improvements within those areas as well.
Yeah, we take that on board totally. I think in the planned outcomes, I hope we would sort of cover these areas under provide options for change in the level of service, review current service clusters both within PES and across our council to determine synergies and optimum models for service delivery, and review current organisational structures to confirm their fit for purpose. So yeah, it's very comprehensive to look at where we may redirect money to give a different level of service in conjunction with and in parallel with the council's priorities.
Thank you for that, Director. Councillor Mail.
Yeah, it's just on Appendix 2, Chair, page 77, and the bottom of the first paragraph where it says CORES, the regeneration strategy for Gretna, Lockerbie and Annan. My understanding is that has now been taken right across the whole of Annandale and Esdale, and if so, could it be changed to recognise that, please?
I picked up on the same point at strategic projects where it says the team works to develop and deliver physical regeneration projects and capital investment projects for Dumfries and CORES. I think it's just being clear about what CORES means. I think it's been widened slightly, or at least certainly that's been in the discussion at the CORES meeting, isn't it, to take in, Councillor Mail says, the whole of Annandale and Esdale. I wonder if we get clarity on that. Is that something that's been decided yet, or is that in the throes of being decided? Yes. Okay, so we can include that as being Annandale and Esdale, as CORES covering the whole of that area now. Okay. Is any other hands up at the moment? I mentioned something earlier in regards to that bullet point at the top of page 71. Is everybody happy with that, which says to review all income streams to ensure they are maximised without causing significant detriment to the local economy was the addition. Councillor Smith?
I think if you look back at the Labour Group's draft budget last year, you'll see we actually proposed that. One of the pieces of work that Borders Council did, and that was a good piece of work, is that they actually, across the council, carried out an analysis of how much everything we charge for, they worked out exactly how much it cost to deliver each of those services, and then they effectively said to members, right, this is how much it costs to deliver that service. If you charge the full amount, this is how much the charge was going to be, and then you make a decision based on what services you're actually going to subsidise. And I think that was a good piece of work there. So, for example, we all know that if we calculated the cost of a swim, that would be way above what we charge, but we'd make a decision ultimately as a council to subsidise the cost of swimming pools. But it may be then some services that we don't actually decide that that's a service that should be subsidised by the taxpayer. The full cost of that service should be passed on to the person that buys that service, and I think that's a starting point. We should work out the cost of all the services we charge for and put that information in front of members, and then we decide which ones we're going to charge the full amount for and which ones as a council we're going to, because Jim mentioned burial grounds. I'm sure that we probably don't charge the full amount for the cost of a burial. Therefore, what is the full cost? And we have to then make a decision as a council whether we are going to charge the full amount as we go forward. Last year we put that in our draft budget, and we actually also put a number of changes to charges in our budget as well to maximise income, and obviously that was rejected.
I'm thinking of the valid points that you're actually bringing up there, and I would imagine that'll come through the service reviews. Yep. So if you don't mind, if we can change that bullet point, and I think it goes right through. Apart from, I think it's Harry's infrastructure, must be no income stream. I didn't find it in infrastructure. But Harry's our bus fleet and such like. Forget what it's. Integrated Transport and Commissioning, Harry. I didn't see it. Paragraph 4 I'm referring to isn't, didn't see it within your... It is there, sorry, I missed that. Is it? Okay, so if we can, I mean, it just asks for that to be, so it's covered up in all, picked up in all the service reviews as well, as it flows through. Okay, I think we agree the desired outcomes and the service reviews, along with the amendments and what's been picked up, because we've got to listen back and pick up exactly what's been said. Okay, thanks very much. Item number 7.
Yeah.
Which is Director's End of Year Assessment, Business Plan Performance, Plan and Environment Services. Over to you, Director. Anything to add?
Nothing to add at this stage, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, we're open for questions. 2.1, we're asked to review the overall summary of the Performance Plan Environment Services set as Appendix 1. So we'll open it up to questions for anybody. Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Chair. It's just under the KPIs, they say the average time to deal with the major development plan applications is, our target was 17.42, but it was actually 42.4. We've increased that next year. We've moved it up to 35, which is half the Scottish average at present. Is that still a realistic target, considering it's only half the Scottish average?
Chair, yes. As you say, we're proposing to review these targets this year because they were set last year in isolation of any publicly available benchmarking information. Now that we've got that benchmark information, we're proposing to reset these targets. We believe that we have to strike a balance between something that's realistic and something that's challenging, and I think that by resetting these two targets to a level where they are just slightly above the Scottish average, that we've introduced a realistic element of challenge into the target, and I think they are achievable with the resources that we've got.
It's yellow. It's marked yellow now, which is within the acceptable levels, which seems it seems a vast difference with 42.4 to 17.42. Just wondering how that wasn't red and it's still yellow.
Chair, I think that relates to the way in which the thresholds were set, recognising the fact that these two targets were effectively kind of finger in the air targets for the first year until such time as we could actually properly compare them with published national benchmarks.
Thanks for that. Any other members? Councillor Smith.
A couple of points, Chair. One is on the issue of slippage, the other one is on energy consumption. The first one on slippage, I just wondered how the value of 87.6% actually compares to other departments. It does seem that there is a sort of long-term issue when it comes to dealing with capital projects in PH&E, that there does seem to be a trend of quite considerable slippage, and you know, the improvement action seems to be the same improvement action every year, but the slippage still seems to exist. So I'm just interested to know how that compares to elsewhere. And in terms of energy consumption on page 116, the target's obviously 13%, and the value this year is 2%, which is a fall on the previous year where we hit 5%. Based on the improvement action proposed, are you confident that the department will reach 13% next year based on that improvement action?
Okay, so on the first point, Councillor Smith, through you, Chair, the slippage, I'm not sure how that compares with other departments, but I can certainly get that information for you, and delighted to circulate that to members. On the energy reduction, we did have an extremely miserable and cold winter, and that hasn't helped with our targets going forward. Are we confident, you asked, if the department could make that reduction? I think in P&E we are doing our best to contribute to the corporate approach, but it does depend. That target is based on the Corporate Council energy consumption, and we are obviously working hard with all departments through our various schemes and champion schemes to encourage departments to cut their energy consumption. So we are depending on getting support from everybody, including members, and how you use your energy when you're in the council. So confident, I can't be 100% confident. There are lots of external pressures that may change that, depending on what sort of winter we have, but confident that we're doing everything possible in our policies and in our encouragement and education to get these targets to be met and to get our consumption down.
Councillor Dempster.
It's just on a particular bugbear of mine, Chair, the performance indicator on the EMES, Elected Members Inquiry System. Percentage of members' inquiries dealt with through elected member inquiries within the agreed timescales, and it's at red, and I see it's 71% against a target 8. Is that because that members are not using it, or is it because we can't provide the information requested within the specified timescale? I hasten to add, I'm not using it. I've never used it, and well, I don't intend to use it. I think it's highly bureaucratic, and obviously it's not working right.
I think the statement, obviously it's not working right, is correct, and I would refute that. I would encourage you to use it, because then the inquiries are all registered, and we are under a direction to respond in a certain timescale, which is absolutely correct. Our target to hit that timescale was 80%, and the target that we achieved was 71%. So the answer is we haven't been responding in the timescale set. Again, what you have to remember is this is the department's performance for 12-13. We're well through 13-14 now, and our performance is improving. It was a fairly new scheme at that time, 12-13, and we are improving. So that does not reflect that it's not working. It reflects that during that year we could have responded far better, and that's something we're working very hard on.
Through you, Chair, Alistair, I don't mean to be offensive. You couldn't pay me to use it. I think one of the bonuses is having a communication with members of staff. I think that's helpful, both for members of staff and members. And it's only, I would have thought, in serious cases that you'd have to use the member inquiry service, that general day-to-day business members should be able to deal with staff. It is a working relationship we have. There's protocols in place that tell you how we should behave. And I think, bearing that in mind, I have no intention of using it.
Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back to the slippage on the capital spending, and I appreciate what Mr Speedy said earlier on in his comments, but obviously there's various reasons for the underspending, the slippage that occurs, but I would think that this council it should be looking to fulfil its duties in that respect, because an underspend of 1.6 million in today's economy could have a considerable effect on the economy of Dumfries and Galloway. Now, whether some of the slippage is because the service committees that we commission for some of these programmes can't cope with the work, I don't know. But again, from Mr Speedy's comments earlier on about coming back and it is comparative to other departments, it would be very interesting. But I really think that we should make that attempt to spend what we have actually allocated within that budget to spend, because it would have a considerable effect on the economy, and it could contribute to employment and all of other aspects of that. So to have continuous slippage, especially to that sort of value, I think we certainly need to be looking at.
I agree that that's very important to the economy, the fact that we have capital investment to spend out there, and that should encourage jobs and all the rest of it. Absolutely agree. There are reasons for slippage, and I think it's a very good point that members are making. I will provide information on a comparison with other departments, but I will also provide clear information on why the slippage has occurred and what it refers to. To a certain extent, that's covered in our capital expenditure outturn report, which comes very soon, but I'll give you more detail on that, and I acknowledge what members are saying. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Nicholson next.
Thank you, Chair. Just on Appendix 3, just the amendment performance information. It seems to me that if you're going to meet the target, then you just increase or decrease whatever it may be. I understand there are some national aspects to this and some of the issues, but we've got local plan applications, for example, and you're increasing the time given between, in this economic times. It does have an impact in the local level, and you're increasing it, I think it's about 30% or something like that. The average time to deal with major plan applications, that's been increased from 17.5 weeks to 35 weeks, which is double the time. As I said, I know the likes of the broadband and that, you've got national considerations to take into account, and could you maybe eke out some of the reasons why, for example, what was strategic partnership to respond to consultation in European funding programmes? This is to reflect Scottish Government consultation process. What does that actually mean? Have you had a directive or something to...
Thank you for that, Councillor Nicholson. Steve, do you want to say anything about the planning targets? And Chris, would you like to say anything about the strategic partnership issue? Thank you.
Chair, I think, as I explained previously, the background and the reason for having to review and reset these targets is just really to emphasise the fact that in resetting the targets, we have attempted to set a challenging target which would actually take us beyond the Scottish average performance. Now, bearing in mind that it's only 18 months or so ago that in terms of our speed of processing planning applications, we were actually bottom of the league table in Scotland. And as a consequence of considerable amount of work that's been carried out within development management, reviewing all of our processes associated with planning applications, taking out inefficiencies, we have managed to improve the turnaround time for planning applications without increasing the level of resources going into that element of the service. So I think we have demonstrated an upward trend, and certainly the feedback that we get through the likes of the local planning agents forums is that that's recognised and also welcomed, because certainly the speed of turnaround is one key aspect that they're always looking for us to improve on. And I hope that in setting these targets, we'll be able to continue with that improvement trend.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of strategic partnership with consultation on European funding, the current European round of funding is 27-2014. So the Scottish Government have set up a number of consultation processes. In terms of our strategic partnership, we work very closely with Scottish Borders Council and Scottish Enterprise through the South of Scotland Alliance. So those are the partnerships that we develop in terms of looking at potential funds going forward in the next programme, 2014-2020.
Thank you for that. On that specific, it's because we're not members of we're no representation in SOSA or the strategic partnership, that we didn't get all the details of that. But thanks for that. It's slowing down because they're not doing their job. But anyway, the one thing I do want to ask as well is, as I said, there is national aspects to these targets, and I understand that completely. But what resources, for example, is the Scottish Government target for building works, for example, that's been reduced. I think ours is 30 days, and it's now been, the Scottish Government target's 20 days. Is there any additional resources coming in for that? Or are you having to use more resources for that?
Well, in simple terms, the answer is no, there's no additional resources to that. And the way that we've managed that is we've just had to review our processes within building standards to make sure that we're capable of adjusting to meet those new targets, but there's no new resources.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Lever, you're next.
Yeah, just touching on the capital spending again, Councillor Peacock's comments about the slippage and the director's commitment to come forward with which programmes are actually slipped within that. I think it would also be useful, since it actually says that there were some overspends, to have a list of the overspends as well, because, you know, it's all about project management. If you've got slippage, you've got overspend, it's just opposite sides of the same coin, as far as I'm concerned. So if that could be extended to that. And in terms of the biomass heating and solar PV, it's got project progress 0%. I assume that's because we haven't actually been able to monitor what the effects are. We've got the equipment in place effectively, we just don't know what the effect's going to be. So although it comes up as 0%, I think it's actually, we haven't made progress towards achieving this, we just haven't been able to monitor what the progress is. So can I just have assurance that we do have the equipment in place?
I think that's absolutely right. We do have the equipment in place. We're awaiting a post-occupation evaluation on biomass from Strategic Property Services. I've seen the draft of that report, and hopefully that will come before members very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, thanks for that. Councillor Diggle, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the energy reduction, is that in terms of volume of energy, of fuel, or is it the actual cost?
No, it's not based on cost, it's based on consumption of kilowatt hours or whatever. But again, I can give you a clear indication of the measurement. Yeah.
So whether it's oil, gas, electric, yes, it's all fuels. Yep. Okay. The only question that I've noted that nobody's picked up on is just a small one in regards to page 119, Director, and that's, does the new policy that we've implemented in regard to waste, does that have an effect on these targets or not? If it does, we'll leave it that now or later.
It has no effect on the figures you see there, because that was 12-13, but as we go forward with the new zero waste investment plan and the new zero waste plan, new collection system, there is no doubt that that will have some effect on the disposal, the net cost of refuse disposal per premise, and whether that increases or goes down in the future, we don't know. We're certainly expecting that it will decrease, because we are going to be diverting more and more waste away from landfill. Therefore, we will be avoiding the landfill tax, which will peak at £80 a tonne. And beyond £80, we don't know what government will introduce, but it certainly may go towards £100 a tonne. So this council is in a very good position going forward with its zero waste plan. I think the SOA indicates that we will only our target is to be only landfilling 5% of household waste by 2016.
Thanks very much for that. No other members with their hands up, so the recommendations to review as per Appendix 1, which we've done. Scrutinise the exception reports, which we've certainly done. Agree the amendments to the performance information as per Appendix 3. And it's not all gloom and gloom, I don't think. I think it was a good report, actually. They were doing some good things, so we should recognise that as well. Thanks very much. Item number 8 is refresh business plan for 2012-15 Plan Environment Services. This is for you, Director. Anything to add to this report?
Nothing to add at this stage, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The recommendations for members are asked to approve the amendments to the business plan for Plan Environment Services as set on Appendix 1, and note the revised budget for 2013-14 as per Appendix 2. Any members got any questions in regards to this? Councillor Smith?
Can I just ask that the household waste targets, are they, the figures we've got there obviously adds up to 100% on page 129, but are those targets the Scottish Government targets? So, for example, the percentage recycling of household waste, 45% by 2016, is that effectively the Scottish Government ones?
I'll ask Greg Blaney to answer this. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. The targets there are council targets. The Scottish Government targets are non-statutory. What we're aiming to achieve is the 50% statutory target within the European Waste Framework Directive.
Councillor Smith?
It wasn't as much, I know there's the council targets because we are setting them, but do they reflect national targets? So what you're saying is that the national target in the framework is 50%. Is that by a certain date? Because we're obviously targeting 45. And what I'm trying to get at, are we effectively, by setting the targets that we're setting, are we meeting our obligations, basically?
Yeah, we are. The 50% recycling rate target is for 2020. In terms of the Scottish Government target, it's zero biodegradable waste to landfill by 2020. So we're aiming for 95% by 2015-16.
Okay, thanks very much for that. It was actually, remember, picked up on yesterday at the communication changes seminar, so it's a valid point. Councillor Lever.
Yeah, my query is about the household waste as well. Bottom page 128, percentage reuse of household waste, that's 0.5% by 2016. Effectively, this would be not rendering the waste down into its component parts and then reforming it. This would actually be, for example, taking a bottle and reusing it as a bottle rather than breaking it down. What scope is there within that in order to increase the percentage of that? I mean, in terms of energy efficiency, that's the way we should be going, I would have thought.
In terms of the reuse target, that's going to be through a contract with the Stranraer Furniture Project in Moffat Can. They're going to build reuse centres at the Zero Waste Parks in Sederunt and Dumfries. And that's really the contractual target they've provided. That's the level of reuse they think they can achieve. But obviously we're working very closely with them to try and increase that, because that is the preferred route within the waste hierarchy.
Okay, thanks very much. No further members? So, we're okay to approve the amendments as per business. Councillor Smith, sorry, missed you there.
I was just interested, obviously there was a number of amendments in the previous report to the business plan rather than this report, which was, I thought, kind of a strange thing. I thought there would have been in this report, but there's one is what I highlight is on the issue of the Dumfries Town Centre Action Plan. I think I have never seen a single report to this committee that actually tells anybody what the Dumfries Town Centre Action Plan actually is. I know what it is, because I go to Town Centre Forum meetings, and one report has came to Nistdale Area Committee setting out exactly what the action plan is. But I guarantee, if I went around this room, members would not be able to tell me what the Dumfries Town Centre Action Plan actually is. So while it's constantly referred to in the business plan, nobody's ever actually brought a report to tell us what it is. It tends to be a moving feast, I have to say, that it gets changed on a regular basis, but nobody's ever actually brought a detailed report saying exactly what the Dumfries Town Centre Action Plan actually is. Even although it's built into the business plan and it's built into the fact that we've got to assess it. I noticed that the delivery date, if you go back to the previous report in Appendix 3, it says the due date has been changed from March 2013 to March 2015. But I don't think we've ever seen the actual detail of what it constitutes, and I think that's an important thing that we should be getting regular reports. We've had quite a few regular reports recently on the Stranraer Regeneration Action Plan, but that's only been because there's been additional funds there to allocate towards it. But we don't really get detailed reports on these action plans and what progress is being made unless we're asked for funding.
Thanks for that. Director, do you want to make a comment? I know you're going to look at it closely, but is there...
Yeah, I understand what Councillor Smith is saying. I'll look at that very closely and check. I was looking at my notes here, hoping to be able to answer that. But yeah, that's something I'll look at. Come back to members. Thank you.
We'll come back. We'll take that on board, and I think it's correct when you're saying it's Stranraer did come back here, so if it's Stranraer can come back, maybe Dumfries can as well, if that's the case. If it's right that it has never been back to committee. Don't have any other members at this point. Up to agree with the amendments as per Appendix 2 and take on board the last points. Thank you. Item number 9 is Plan Environment Services Review Budget Outturn Report for the year 2012-13. Director, do you have anything to add to this report?
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you very much.
2.1, the recommendations is picking up within 1/10 of a percentile of being on target. It's a 44k underspend. And 2.2 is asking us to note that this underspend has been transferred to the earmark committed funds as per detailed in Appendix 2. Anybody got any questions on this one? Or Councillor Smith?
Quite helpful to know, if you look at Appendix 1, it would be quite helpful to know the reasons behind the various budget adjustments. I'm presuming that some of it will have been external grants, etc., but there's obviously quite substantial adjustments throughout the year. It'd be quite helpful just to be reminded what the reasons for some of those adjustments actually were.
I'm not sure we can... Janet, are we able to answer that now, or we'll come back to members?
The budget adjustments during the year are due to particularly one-off projects and where we've had grant income in individually, but I can get detailed to members, if that would be helpful.
Anybody else got any other points you'd like to pick up under item number 9? Get that information back to you? No? Okay, thanks very much. Item number 10 is the Planning and Environment Services Capital Expenditure Programme 2012-13 Outturn and Progress Report. Director, again, do you have anything to add to this report?
Nothing to add at this stage, Chair. Thank you.
And it's wide open to members at this point. Recommendation 2.1 is to note the financial outturn position for agreed capital projects, programmes against the various funding streams as per indicated at Appendix 1. No hands up. Councillor Dempster.
Just, I find it disappointing, Chair, that on page 140, the maintenance block underspends where countryside and access due to consent from landowners but not forthcoming and inability to reallocate funding due to staffing pressures. I find that particularly disappointing because there are so many projects that could be dealt with. There are so many projects, will probably be in hand right across the region, that we don't actually carry out the work ourselves. I would have thought we commission a lot of that work, and I find that disappointing. And I think, as a consequence of that, I think it was the budget no cut last year because the country didn't access didn't spend all their money. That's maybe a different matter altogether, but I'm sure that was the upshot of that money not being spent. And I would have thought we would have had some measures in place to pick up, if we found that one project fell, but for whatever reason, there'd be a number of other projects ready to go. And if we're not doing that, that's something we should certainly be looking at so that this situation doesn't recur. Because it's madness where the projects that could be taking place that are enhancements for the areas, Dumfries and Galloway in general, that will let something like this just fall by the wayside. Really disappointed with that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Dempster. Councillor Ogilvie.
Thanks, Chair. It's on page 141 and it's the second bullet point, Windermere Road, Annan. It says here that it's not been agreed, but I think it has been agreed now, is it?
An update on that, Director?
Yes, we have a verbal agreement on it, and this coming Friday is the deadline to actually sign the legal agreement, and we're very hopeful that that'll be the case.
Looking positive. No other members indicating to come in. 2.2 is to progress to the end of the financial year 2012-13 and spend against individual programmes, projects as indicated in Appendix 2, including accelerated spend against maintenance block of 110k as detailed in paragraph 3.3. And 2.3 is to note again the carry forwards due to slippage of the funds as indicated. Okay, thank you very much. Item number 11. Road Maintenance Management Service Funding. Director, again, do you have anything to add to this report?
Nothing to add, Chair. I have my colleague Charles Clemmy from DG First present to help answer any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Councillor Prentice.
Thanks, Chair. Just more a comment actually on page 154. I think I'm very concerned about actually the reduction in the drainage budget at the side of the roads. I was just flagging up once more that there is, and I think Charles can maybe give us the answer that I'm looking for regarding road maintenance when we're actually fixing roads. I would ask that we please fix the drainage at the sides of the roads as well as part of the programme for road maintenance. There's no point in actually doing road maintenance if the drainage at the side of the roads is not fixed.
I know we agreed that as a part of the capital projects, that would be the case, and I've seen that firsthand, it's been taking place, but Charles, over to you.
Yeah, Chair, if I just point out that with all our surfacing schemes this year, we're actually including drainage elements and we're upgrading all the drainage aspects as well at that particular time. Whilst the option 1, 6.2, Table 2 actually indicates a reduction in drainage for this current year, the realignment of this budget is for this year only, and it's anticipated that next year would revert back to the original budget with the original allocation for drainage in the forthcoming years.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dempster?
I'd be interested to know where we are with pothole filling in general. I mean, we talk about response times. I had members of staff look through an area in my ward. It must be 8 weeks ago. There's some of these holes now craters, and they're still there. We've done nothing at all in 8 weeks, despite members of staff looking at them personally. Now, I find that difficult because members of the public come to me on a regular basis, and they will do to every member in this room and probably every member of the council. But just to have nothing done after you go to all the trouble of meeting with staff, showing the staff the issues, talking the issues through, and 8 weeks later, there's no change. I find that particularly disappointing. And the other thing is, the previous practice on page 157 of hole filling, that's still taking place. We still fill holes the old way. And it needs to stop. We need to do something. But my big concern is, have we the resources? Have we the staff? And again, there's a communications issue. When members bring to the attention of senior members of staff issues, and 8 weeks later there's nothing done, there's something wrong with that. There is definitely something wrong with that.
I'd like you to pick up in there in particular, Charles, is if we go back to recommendations, we look to put an extra £250,000 into roads investment. Have you got the capacity within DG First to deliver that? And I think that's pretty much the point that Councillor Dempster's picking up on.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I could pick up on Councillor Dempster's first point, I would actually like the opportunity to discuss that with Councillor Dempster in some detail and pick that up offline, if that was okay with you, Chair. As far as the capacity to deliver that's concerned, I think I should point out that that DG First don't just simply maintain the council's roads. The commission that we operate is for the maintenance and management of the council's road network. We have various subcontractors that we can call upon, and we can increase our output pretty quickly to cope with any of the workload that we have at the moment. So certainly what I'm saying is, no, there isn't a problem with resources.
That was my understanding. We'll have Councillor Lever next.
Table on Appendix 1. You know, it's very interesting. You wonder how much money we as a council have wasted over the decades just by doing temporary repairs. You know, if we'd actually gone and looked at how much it was costing us just to do temporary repairs compared to the permanent repairs, you know, it's something like 8 to 18 times more we were spending, and we've been doing this for years. You know, I think this is it's a salutary lesson, and we need to go back and look at the quality effectively of all the services we produce within the council and see if we can actually save what effectively is huge amounts of money just by doing it in a different way. And I know the Appendix 2 refers to the Bellwyn scheme claim, but I see there is actually a budget in there for road markings maintenance. Do we have a budget generally for road markings maintenance throughout the roads system? Because this is becoming more and more obvious that a lot of the road markings have disappeared at roundabouts, etc., and junctions, which I think you know, we need to address because it is potentially a very dangerous neglect.
Yes, we do have a budget for roads maintenance, the maintenance road markings, also signs, etc. I couldn't tell you just off the top of my head what that figure is at the moment, but a lot of the lines where they've deteriorated road markings, etc., they're picked up as part of our new inspection system, and the funds are allocated according to where they're required.
Councillor Carson.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to congratulate Charles and his team. I get far more responses in terms of how we're seeing the improvements in the roads and the potholes being improved. I don't know whether that's just the work that Charles does, or perhaps that the three members in Castle Douglas and Glen Kens use the EMES system and actually get a response within 3 days. So that's maybe a tip for Councillor Dempster. Now, one of the other points I was going to ask is regarding to the impact of severe winter weather. And bullet point 5.6, you've laid out the claims to the Belwyn. Does that include compensation claims made by landowners for damage potentially done during the road clearing process?
Yes, Chair, through yourself, it does include that, where we did damage some fences and dikes just in the act of clearing the snow across the verges, etc. So there is an amount against that, and I think you can see that detailed in the appendix as well.
Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Chair. I think what's really frustrating about this report is that in the past the Labour Group have proposed several occasions and been voted down to increase the capital allocation towards road resurfacing. We were told by the administration that first of all we spend enough on roads, and secondly we were told that DG First doesn't have the capacity to actually take any more funding, and I think both those arguments have been absolutely blown out of the water today by this report that shows that we're not spending enough on resurfacing it, and if we're going to actually achieve what we agreed in terms of a programme, we're actually going to have to transfer funding from 2014-15 to this year. Now what that means in practical terms is a cut in funding next year if you're going to bring forward some of those funds, and maybe if the administration had listened to the Labour Group and actually voted through the additional 2 million that we proposed over the next 2 years, then we'd actually be spending an awful lot more, and you wouldn't have to wait 3 days to get your reply in EMS for your potholes. You'd probably get a reply even quicker than that. My worry in terms of the revenue options is my fear that this is something that's going to come back to haunt us, that if we reduce the spending on drainage, ground maintenance, gull emptying and other routine work that when we're putting forward, and in Councillor Carson's cases, EMS require requests for gullies to be cleaned and drains to be done, the reply is going to come back, well, we haven't got any money to do that because you just voted to cut the budget. So I'm really worried about what the consequences of this change is actually going to mean. I'm very much in favour of increasing investment in fixing our roads, but I worry what the consequence is going to be in terms of reducing these other services. And it may very well be that it's only for this year, but it's not as if next year's budget is going to be too much. You know, we're always still going to have the issue that we're constantly going to be raising drainage issues because the budget doesn't cover all these things. So I really worry this is something that's going to come back to haunt us. I very much welcome the fact that we're going to increase the capital investment by bringing it forward. I just wish we had actually invested the money when we had the chance to make that decision.
Thank you. Don't have any answer there. Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. Really, in a way, following on the back of Colin's comments here as well, I do have a real concern at the fact that we're having to chop and change budgets about to look at the road network here, especially on the maintenance issues. In my area alone, very recently we've had 2 petitions by different villages brought forward because of the state and the lack of maintenance to the roads within their areas. And this is a real concern. We all know the budget pressures that are on us, but you know, to be chopping and changing by delaying some schemes, by moving money around from one pot to the other just to try and make this fix for this particular financial year, I think we really need to look at that, and I agree with Councillor Smith's comments here. The other point that I would like to make is on page 152 there in 4.3, you're asking for another £500,000 to be brought forward, which would meet the current demands of outstanding carriageway repairs. I mean, that's obviously not taken into account the repairs that will be coming forward from that throughout the rest of the year. That's just that amount of money, according to the report, is just to meet the current demand on the network. So we still have another sort of 5 months of the year yet, so I'm sure that demand will increase as the year goes on. And that again is only the demand that the officers have put in the reports. I'm sure there is a lot more demand out there, which we do keep reporting in through EMS and various other avenues. So I'm concerned that the 0.5 million that you're asking for is going to be enough. That's just to cover the outstanding ones now, and there's going to be more pressure on that as the year goes on.
I think it's we're all agreed there is real pressure on our roads network as it stands at the moment, and if we could wave that magic wand, we'd have an extra 10 million into it straight away. But I think we've been reassured if we had that money. I certainly, as I went through this report, and both yourself, Councillor Smith and Councillor Peacock, have picked up in particular on a point I was going to raise later on, and it's should we be looking in particular for the Belwyn scheme, depending on the success of that and how much it's actually cost us in real terms. Should we be looking at a later stage, whether it's through the budget process or whether it's through a bid to a corporate fund, that we should be applying for extra funding for the roads because of what's actually happened. But I mean, my point was at 5.6, and there's 1.71 million there, I think, potential damages through what happened through the bad weather. Just what do you think the real chances are of getting a realistic claim back of that? What do you think they are, Charles?
All I can say that is that we've done quite a bit of work as a service to try and put together a claim. It's pretty well detailed. We've worked with our colleagues in the finance department, and I think that we've put together a pretty good, clear, concise claim with evidence, photographs, etc. And I mean, a lot of the text that you see there in the report is pulled straight out of Belwyn and the requirements, and I couldn't really comment on the success of that. I just know that we've done the best that we possibly can in terms of putting together the evidence related to the claim, you know.
Thanks for that. I think when we come back to the recommendations, see if we possibly pick up on later future funding sources, whether that's through the budget process. I've got Councillor Martin, I've got you down there. Councillor Martin, you're next.
Right, just a quick one, Chair. It's Appendix 1. The first bullet, the first point, previous practice. We note there the practice of park and work. The practice has ceased. I know it can get done if it's an emergency repair, but actually, when did it stop? When did we stop doing the park and work?
Yes, it's a natural process that started with a report that went to DG First Committee April last year, when we started to look at new systems and new processes of work. I think if you look at certainly the Nithsdale area, I think we were up, as far as first-time permanent repairs were concerned, we were up at 70% for last year. So I guess we were probably, just through a natural process, we're starting to try and achieve 100%. And yes, there are some instances where we may go out and have to temporarily fill a road, particularly those roads that we're about to resurface. We've been doing that in some instances, but we've been trying to sign those roads accordingly to say that a surfacing scheme is about to happen and we temporarily repair that because it's prudent to do so. We've got a very few Cat 1 defects that we're actually having to fill on a temporary basis. So, I mean, I'm hopeful throughout this year that practice will continue to reduce to the point where it just won't happen at all.
But it's not actually ceased yet, as it says in the report.
I think you kind of alluded to yourself, Councillor Martin, where it is an emergency case, it would be the case, and that was made very clear back. It was the report to DG First Management Committee back in April 2012. But I mean, I think I've certainly seen an improvement. I was quite critical, to be absolutely honest, in regards to the way. Were you wanting? Sorry, Councillor Collins, is it for yourself? Or were you wanting in there, Charles? No,
yeah, could I just say that the note's there to say that the practice has actually ceased. We're telling our workforce not to do this. You know, we've actually stated quite clearly that you will not do this unless there's special circumstances. So the practice was there before, where people were going out and chasing potholes and having to fill them and pack and whack to meet the KPIs, but the instruction has gone out to the workforce and the practice has ceased.
That's certainly my observations across, not just in my own area, across the board, unless it is an emergency. Okay, we'll get back to the recommendations. 2.1 is to agree the accelerated funding of £250,000 from the infrastructure asset class. 2.2 is to agree to reallocate £500,000 for the carriageway repairs for 2013 roads maintenance management service budget, and 2.3 is to note the current position with respect to the road service submission for the Council's claim for the Bellwyn scheme. Okay, thanks very much for that. Item number 12 is Go Smart project regional rollout. Director, do you have anything to add to this report?
Nothing to add, Chair, and I have my colleague Douglas Kirkpatrick who will help answer any questions members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, thanks for that. It's over to members. Any members got any questions in regards to this? Councillor Smith?
I mean, obviously members right across the groups expressed concern last month over the lack of detailed information, and what we've obviously got this month is just a copy of the report that was actually available this time last month, and it was published by the Scottish Government, but it still doesn't answer the sort of fundamental questions as far as I'm concerned in terms of actually drilling down and looking at these individual schemes. I don't know how many people use the car club. I know the council block books some of the car club spaces, and actually therefore this council subsidises the car club by using it. Even though we've got our own pool system, we actually seem to block book an independent car club, which is bizarre, in order presumably to make it viable, and I have no idea how many people use that. I see the cars parked there, but I don't know how many people use that, but I'm being asked today to say this is a good thing, it should be continued. I have no idea what the most up-to-date figures are in relation to the bike hire scheme. There is nothing detailed in here. Frankly, I don't think it's particularly well used. The last figures I've seen, yet we're being asked to say this is a great success and it should be developed further. In particular, what I'm not sure about is exactly how this will be rolled out in other towns. We've got an appendix which has got a tick next to the word bus and a town beside it, and I've absolutely no idea what this means in practical terms. Certainly if I were a councillor in those areas, I'd want to know in detail what funding the council plan to spend on this. The report says it's within existing budgets, but everything's within existing budgets. Now we've set the budget. It's how much is it going to cost to roll out this scheme into the individual towns, and exactly what will that actually mean in practical terms, and will we be rolling out something that frankly in my view hasn't been successful in Dumfries so far. This cost £5.8 million, and I'd challenge anyone in the room today to say that that was £5.8 million incredibly well spent. Some of the projects were good, and other projects, frankly, in my view, have been a failure, but we don't seem to be actually drilling down and putting our hands up and saying, actually, I'm sorry, but the bike hire scheme hasn't worked, or that some of the public realm improvements look nice, but frankly, I can't see what they've achieved. There's a big lump of paving at the end of New Terrace, and frankly, for the life of me, I have no idea why, and I don't actually see any evidence at all to say that that's actually achieved anything and made it easier for pedestrians. I think they're perfectly capable of crossing the road, whether there's a big piece of pavement there or not. So I just think we've spent an awful lot of money, and I know it was supposed to be a trial, but until we're actually satisfied, we shouldn't be rolling some of this out to other areas. We should be rolling out the things that have worked, but we should be, frankly, kicking it to touch those projects that haven't worked. And this report doesn't tell me. It really does not drill down enough into some of these projects to tell me how many people use it. How many people use the schemes in the edge of towns when it comes to park and ride schemes? I have no idea. I look at the one at Heath Hall, Locker Briggs area. I have no idea how many people use that on a daily basis. Does anybody know how many people use that on a daily basis? And if so, why is that sort of information not contained within this report today? So, I mean, I really worry, it's a case of let's just roll this out to other areas, and we have no idea what exactly we're rolling out. And we have no idea what's been successful and what hasn't been successful.
Thanks, Chair. The report tries to go into as much detail as possible of what we have on the schemes. We have highlighted through the report that monitoring is an issue, that we don't have the resources to actually go and count the number of cars out there at each of the park and choose sites. That's mentioned in the element under park and choose. Bike to go, I think it's highlighted within the report that it may not have been as successful as we would have hoped. It was one of the parts of the actual Go Smart funding was to try be innovative trial systems that hadn't been trialled elsewhere in a town of this size. There are options under page 23 of the Appendix 1. The assets will belong to the council. After the scheme's over, it is funded at the moment, the Bike to Go, anyway, until September 2014, and there are various options there. The rollout and usage of the car club started in November 2012, so it's very much in its early days. I got some figures this morning or some advice this morning from the operator of that, Co-Wheels, and they're saying that it's the most successful increase in usage at the moment, but it's very much been internal usage at the moment. It will be rolled out to the public in the near future, and hopefully that percentage increase rises as well. Figures on these actual usage figures will come out as the system develops. Regards to items such as the public realm, the independent monitoring carried out on behalf of the Scottish Government shows that overall walking and cycling increased in Dumfries as part due to the public realm enhancements and the funding within there.
You know, walking probably increased because the price of petrol, to be perfectly honest with you, and I'm sure that's why car usage also fell as well. I mean, the idea that it's to do with public realm, and I walk as much as I possibly can. I've not walked more because there's a new pavement. I have to be perfectly honest. I mean, I just don't get that at all. I don't know how many people use DG Trip Share. I know how many people are registered on it, but I have no idea how many people share as a result of DG Trip Share. But I'm being asked to develop that particular project. Again, I don't know what the latest figures are on the self-service bike hire scheme. And what you're saying effectively is the car club only works at the moment because the council use it. So that's not really a car club, that's a pro system. So, I mean, I really am nervous about actually saying we should be developing these particular projects when I have absolutely no evidence to say this is not just money being thrown down the drain, frankly, at a time where budgets are being incredibly tight. What does developing, and if you look at Appendix 2, the bike hire scheme, what does developing that scheme actually mean, and how much will it cost to develop it? I mean, we have to maintain it because these things are stuck in the town centre, but what does developing it mean? Are we planning on spending a bit more? Are we getting more bikes? Are we putting it other places? How much is this going to cost? And the information is just not there in order to actually make a decision on that. I mean, I can't support Appendix 2 because, frankly, I have no idea if any of these schemes, particularly the car club, the bike hire scheme and the trip share scheme, have actually been a success in any shape or form.
The bike scheme and the rollout of the bike scheme was not necessary to roll, as you can see from the ticks in Appendix, I think it's Appendix 3 for the rollout programme. We're not intending to roll the bike hire scheme across any of the other towns in the region. The bikes will become the council's assets in the future, and we're looking at future options in that, and there will be a further report comes back on what to do with that once the existing funding in September 2014 runs out, or certainly prior to that, to give the committee enough evidence as to what to do with those assets.
Thanks for that. That was my very question. It's funding there to 2014, so therefore what happens thereafter? Further report comes back identifying pressures and probably further updates at that point. Councillor Dempster, you're next.
Thanks, Chair, and it's in Appendix 3, page 199. I was paying attention to the bottom two for obvious reasons, but if you look at that, there's no intention to progress a car club or a bike hire in either Kirkconnell or Sanquhar, and yet if you go further along, there's an opportunity to develop a park and choose. I don't know if it's going to park and choose. If we not get bikes or car shares, it's only the bus or the train left, and that's what we'll go anyway. But and I'd love to see public realm developed. I think that, well, for me that would be really nice. But I think what was most important to us would be the real-time information. We've had situations when buses have broken down, just not turned up at all. And given the time that we have to wait for replacement buses or the next bus in the service sequence, which is 2 hours in each direction, real-time information is really important to the folk that use the buses in the rural areas. So I think that would be something that would be very positive, very useful and very helpful, and I'd like to see that. I wouldn't mind seeing a plan and how, because the whole thing is just about talking at the moment about development, and I can see that, but I wouldn't mind seeing a plan and how you would envisage that different schemes or portions of it being developed across the region. I certainly wouldn't want to abandon the thing without seeing where we're going with it, and real-time information is the key for me, because that is a positive step. I see it working in Dumfries, and it's very useful, especially in inclement weather. It's all right, you know, you could enjoy waiting for a bus, but it's not so funny in the middle of December or January when yin's no coming.
On the same point, yep.
Just on that real time, I mean, it doesn't actually work in Dumfries because it's not in Dumfries. There's a timetable there. It doesn't actually tell you if if the bus isn't turning up, or if it's going to be 10 minutes or 15 minutes late. So there is there is an electronic system in most of the shelters that I use, but it's it's not real time. It's just a bus timetable. For example, I was there on Saturday standing waiting in a bus. It didn't turn up. The same bus the week before, it was half an hour late. So you've got people there, with children. You've got people, elderly standing about. So real time would be an advantage if it was actually implemented in these, but it isn't. So that is something that needs to be done.
Douglas?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Regard to Councillor Dempster's point about park and choose and development in other towns, very much the development of and the rollout of Go Smart we see is about looking at opportunities within each of these areas. We've got no firm plans for any of them. I don't have a firm plan for a park. I may have thoughts in my head, Councillor Dempster, but each of these things, we're looking at Kirkcudbright at the moment, so we're identifying where there are gaps and identifying what opportunities are in there as well. With regard to real time, yes, Thornhill will shortly have real times. Kirkconnell and Sanker, there's a couple of stops due to get them in the near future as well. Councillor Nicholson's comment as well, real time should be working and be counting down on most buses in Dumfries Town. I'm aware that it's not. Stagecoach also have the ability to put an advert on to say if the bus is late or is running, is not going to be operating at all due to, as yesterday, a road closure on Barry Avenue, Cresswell Avenue caused a bit of confusion in the Lough Vale area. That facility should be used by the management at Stagecoach, and it's not being used as we would see that. I would like to see that, and I think we will be working very closely with our partners to make sure that happens in the future.
Can I indulge you for just a minute? I hope Kirkconnell and Sanker's not at the bottom of that list deliberately. I hope that's just an accident.
And I think what I'm picking up on as well is that this, just for absolute clarity from either the director or Douglas, that this at some point these projects will come back to this committee to be ratified, and the detail will be there at that point, and the budget pressures against them as well. So the decision could be made then. Councillor Martin, I think your hand up, sorry.
Aye, thanks, Chair. It's just part of this, I've got to agree with quite a lot of Colin said there, like, as I say, wasted money. I don't know, we've got the Crichton travel plan there with the Crichton Development Company as a funding partner in that. As I say, they've got 4 bullet points: membership of the DG, trip share and that, cycle facilities, bus facilities and the travel information and that. As I say, I think if you ask majority of people if they've seen any improvement on the traffic going to the Crichton, it would be a resounding no. So, as I say, with no information there, if that has been taking any of the traffic away from the Crichton up there, like, and I say, and just getting back to what Ronnie was saying about the real times in the bus thing, as I say, just across the road there, a fortnight ago, I waited nearly an hour for a bus to come, and it was going, the countdown was on for about 8 minutes, right down to 3 minutes, and it jumped back to 28 minutes. It was the 12:30 bus to Lough Vale, Michael, Douglas.
Yeah, again, I'm hearing stories about the real time not working, and it's good to have the time and the date. If we have that information, we can then check to make sure that the system happens. So when it happens, if we could inform our team, we can actually deal with it there and then make sure the system works appropriately. Because I'm not there, and my staff are not there, so we need to have that information to make things work.
Thanks for that. These points will be picked up and addressed. So 2.1 is to note the detailed monitoring provided on the Go Smart Dumfries project as per Appendix 1. That's a matter of detail which is contained there. 2.2 is to agree the aims, objectives and delivery strategy for Go Smart as shown in Appendix 2, be extended across Dumfries and Galloway. I'll go to 2.3 and then I'll come back to, because I think it's important that it does come back to this committee with the details, so we'll pick up at that. 2.3 is we're asked to the roll-up programme and to agree, the roll-up programme for 2013-14 as per Appendix 3. This funding is only in for a year, so therefore we need, I think, the detail on finances and the actual projects to come back to this committee at some point. So how do we include that in there? Councillor Smith, you walked in first.
Agree with 2.3. I'm certainly, I'm pleased we're going to come back to 2.2. I think there's more discussion, but I don't agree that we should accept a roll-up programme as shown in Appendix 3. I think we should be asking for more detailed reports on how it's going to be rolled out in the proposed areas before we agree to that, because I don't know how it's going to work. All I've got is a tick in a box, basically. But I'm not prepared to agree to something and then get the detail later. I want to know exactly what the detail is first before I agree to something. So I would change that to agree to receive more detailed reports on the proposed rollout for 2013-14. I want to know exactly what it means in practical terms. And I would like to see what the cost is as well. I mean, it's fine to say it's within existing resources, but their resources could go elsewhere if, frankly, it's not seen as a priority for the council. So I'd like to see a more detailed report on that before it's rolled out.
Okay, any other members got any other thoughts in regards to that? I mean, I don't think you'll have to, by the looks of it. I don't think you'll have to. I mean, I think we're in agreement. We're agreeing the same thing. We want to see the detail come back, including the financial pressures that what would be on the council, and also clearly aligned to our council's priorities. So just remind us again, Councillor Smith, please, what you were asking to amend 2.3, I think you said, or take out, or add amend 2.2 and take out 2.3.
I mean, I don't see the point of 2.2 yet, but I can amend that if you wish to. But 2.3, I would amend it to agree to receive more detailed reports on the proposed rollout programme for 2013-14, including costs. And in terms of 2.2, I've still got concerns over exactly what it means in terms of, it's the 3 projects in particular. It talks about developing these projects. So we're agreeing to develop projects, and I've still got concerns over that's the car club issue, the bike hire scheme, and DG chip share. 3 projects that I don't have any evidence at all. In fact, and also the park and choose sites. 4 projects that I don't have any evidence at all as to what has actually happened on the ground. I have got figures, historic figures on the bike hire scheme that we've all seen in the media, and that's all I've actually got in any of these projects.
So, I mean, at that, are you thinking? Are you looking for an amendment at that point? You're asking not to agree, or what are you actually? I mean, how?
If somebody has got a proposal to develop the car club and the bike hire scheme, etc., when the current funding runs out, then we want to see that proposal. I don't want to agree to a principle of something when I don't actually have a clue what it means.
I think how does that affect 2.3, I think, in particular, because I would imagine it will have an effect on it.
I'm more than willing to bring further detail on each of these elements as to as much information as we have to supply members with usage figures, etc., and where we're looking for development within that. It doesn't really affect the aims and objectives of it's the delivery strategy is the element of it. And I think if I can give more detail, we could bring that back with when we bring back the report, or as agreed in Appendix 3 about proposals for rolling out, we could bring back the strategy element of it there. So that would tie them together, if that makes if that's any help or if that's hindered.
If that's the case, if you're saying that 2.2 doesn't have an effect on what's coming back in 2.3, I think that's what you said, just for clarity. Okay, we're okay with that then?
Pet number 2.2 says is that to get a further report on those aims and objectives. I mean, I'm not agreeing to develop the car club or the bike hire scheme or park and choose sites until I see exactly what that means. I don't care whether it's aims and objectives or not. I want to see what it means.
Derek?
Thank you, Chairman. Happy to clarify. My understanding is members have agreed recommendation 2.1. When it comes to 2.2 and 2.3, the spirit of the committee seems to be that a more detailed report will be brought forward, including costs, specifically in relation to the rollout of the programme and the specific 4 projects that Councillor Smith made. That seems to be the general consensus, and that will be brought back to a future meeting of this committee.
Thank you very much for that. Item number 13. Burn Statue Regeneration Project. We have a presentation here, don't we? Yep. We have a director, just to outline what we've got to do here, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have nothing to add to the report at this stage, but we're going to introduce the report. Jason Sayers is going to give a short presentation, and then we'll take questions from members. Thank you. Just be a few seconds while we set up the technology.
Okay, thanks, Chair. The burn statue area of the High Street in Dumfries has been the subject of much discussion recently, and this is a presentation that really explains how we are wanting to move forward with the project now that we've received all of the consultation that we've had. The initial idea was to actually put in place a transformational design that really looked at how we can challenge local behaviours and getting people to utilise this space in a completely different way than is the case currently. We've got cars, buses, vans, people loading, people parking ad hoc, and the space just simply doesn't work. In terms of quality of space, it's pretty awful. So the idea is that we try and make this a much more coherent civic space, an urban square. It currently is a traffic roundabout which is dominated by buses and dominated by cars, and people are really pushed to the periphery of the space and doesn't really promote the town in its best possible light. Now, there are a number of challenges in bringing forward a design for this square. First of all, it's a bit of an ad hoc square. Its evolution is actually as a street. It was predominantly Castle Street, and Greyfriars Church was hidden behind it. But the evolution over the last 100 years, Castle Street has receded and created a big visual of the Greyfriars Church. And we currently haven't utilised it very well in terms of its function. It's a very utilitarian space dominated by the use rather than a celebration of the burnt statue or a celebration of the space. So the idea of the design really is to make this much more a people-orientated space, to increase the footfall. We still have the challenges of the buses utilising this space, but that actually, in terms of making it a vibrant space, is actually quite a positive attribute. We do need footfall at that end of the high street. It's very important for the traders, so we do see the buses continuing to use this area as a vital part of the project design. As you can see from this illustration, which is an overhead from the high street looking towards Greyfriars Church, it shows that we're actually formalising the square. We are reducing the width of the carriageway for the buses. That means the buses have to drive much more slowly around this space, which gives the pedestrian much more dominance in this area. We're also creating much more of a feature around the statue itself. The materials that we are using there will be different than the rest of the materials in the public realm, which will be picking out the statue. And we're also providing more seating in the central area. The idea is that we get people utilising this space, walking across the area in a variety of different ways, and also creating views of the church. I think the church is quite a magnificent attribute to the town, and we need to maximise that as well as maximising the urban quality and the urban fabric around that part of the town. This gives you the overhead, ideally shows the continued circulation of the clockwise route for the buses. The buses will come in and enter from the bar area, travelling in a clockwise direction and picking up and dropping off in front of the shops. In the anti-clockwise option for this particular project, the buses would have been coming in from the other direction, and in that way we would have been meeting the DDA compliance for two DDA-compliant bus stands. But in subsequent discussions with the bus operators and service providers, because of the technology now that we have in buses being able to higher and lower their suspensions, we no longer need the higher curves in the central area. So the DDA compliance became less of a priority than it was initially. All told, what we're trying to present here is something which substantially and significantly improves the public realm at the upper end of the High Street, and celebrates this space much more of an urban square than the current traffic roundabout that it is at the moment, giving people the opportunity to actually spend some time, whether it's simply just waiting for the buses or whether it is just simply enjoying the space on a pleasant sunny day, but to enjoy the space and experience the quality of the built fabric that we have in Dumfries. We hear on a regular basis how many people come to the town, visitors, tourists, to actually see and photograph the statue. I think this particular design presents the urban square in its best possible light. It blends quite well with the work that we've previously completed on the Vennel and also the High Street. So there is a continuation of the work that we've done, a complete consistency. And in terms of public realm, it fits ideally with the work that we're also doing on the White Sands. Okay, happy to take questions.
Thanks very much for that, Jason. Quite detailed as far as the graphics are concerned. I think I'll open it up to members. The only thing I would like to pick up on first is, before I do, 4.7, Director, whether it's yourself or Jason who answers this, there's a raft of changes there. One of the main issues that came up through the consultation and objections, representations and so on was the one-way proposal through Irvine Street and such like. How much does this actually address that? To me, it does address it when I read through the report. Most of it does, because that was clearly a major thing, retaining the clockwise feature of the Burn Statue, Castle Street area, and the effect, leaving it as is, has on the one-way system as was proposed at the Nestdaily Area Committee. How does that affect now?
Yeah, the revised proposals that are contained within the report completely address the issues of the one-way system. The clockwise circulation around the Burn statue is as existing, so nothing would change. In order to put in the anti-clockwise circulation that we were proposing, would have required the one-way system up Irving Street, circulating back round to Castle Street and then onto the statue area. Clockwise circulation simply just stays as it is. So all of that actually is, well, the new proposals are not subject to any TROs.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Smith, you're first.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I think we do have to reflect on how we ended up in the position that we're actually here today, which is a project that will take place next year rather than a project that will take place this year. And it's the fact that I can recall, I think a couple of years ago, this project for the first time being presented to Nestdale Area Committee, and it was effectively what was on the screen there almost, and that was the only presentation. And members here today, well, this will be the first you'll have seen of this project in terms of a presentation, because it's actually never been to PH&E. And effectively we had a presentation at Nestdale Area Committee, and that was the last we heard of it. Then, almost out of the blue, we had a proposal that never ever came before this committee, never came before Nestdale Area Committee, to actually have a project that would involve the buses going round Burn Statue in an anti-clockwise direction, and the bus stops being placed in the centre of the square rather than at the sides. Now, I don't know where that came from, and I've frankly had no strong views one way or the other. What I constantly asked throughout the process is that the implications of that would mean, first of all, I wanted a guarantee that the buses would not go around side streets in order to turn into the square in a different direction. The pictures are away now, but it would have been impossible for the buses to go in and go around the statue in an anti-clockwise way without effectively coming in at one entrance of Burn Statue area, and you couldn't actually physically get into that entrance if you were a bus coming from Academy Street. So my concern was always buses going round side streets, etc. I was constantly given a guarantee that wouldn't happen, right up until just a couple of weeks ago. Then, absolutely out of the blue, the department published traffic orders that turned a number of residential streets in Dumfries into bus routes and removed car parking spaces and sent buses round streets that frankly weren't currently bus routes. Absolutely out of the blue, with no discussion at all with either members, this committee or anybody else. And I just find that astonishing. We found ourselves in that particular position. I also find it frustrating that the question that I've been asking for almost a year and a half now, which buses will be redirected away from Burn Statue, I've still not actually had an answer to that particular question. When this was first reported, for members of information, this first reported in this Dale Area Committee, there was a strong feeling, I frankly had mixed views about it, but there was a strong feeling from other members of the committee, in particular the Provost, who believed that there should be no buses going to Burn Statue. The Department has came to the conclusion that for the benefit of footfall around that area, there should be buses continuing to go there. What my view is, and I think the vast majority of members' view is, that there are still too many buses. Yes, maybe continue having buses in this area, but we shouldn't have the number of buses that we have at the moment. If you walk up to Burn Statue at the moment, you can sit and see 3-4 buses at any one time parked there. An iconic square in Dumfries is frankly turned into a bus stop. That's all it is at the moment. There are far too many buses in that area, and what members have constantly said they want to see happen is a reduction in the number of buses in that particular area. A most obvious example is the Heath Hall service, which frankly should leave at the same place as a Locker Briggs service, because a lot of people could get either or when they're heading in that direction, but they would have to go from one bus stop to another depending on which one they wanted to get. So a logical thing would have been those two buses leaving from the same place, and that's never happened yet. So I mean, the desire to see less buses at Burn Statue has not been delivered, despite a clear direction that that's what members wanted to see. And now we're in a position where the report we've got in front of us today says we're going to delay this project until next year because we've now rewritten a project that frankly nobody agreed to in the first place. So I really think we have to look at how we actually found ourselves in this particular position. Now we've got a clear policy of this council that any project, and it's never been implemented, I have to say, by the council, but we've got a clear policy that says any capital project that's either 10% over budget or £50,000 over budget, depending on which figures the most, or is 3 months behind the original proposed date, should be referred to the scrutiny committee to analyse how we actually got to that particular position. Now that's a policy of this council. It has never been used for a single capital project. I don't know why, but it's never been used for a single capital project, and I would like to see the whole decision-making process around this project actually referred to the scrutiny committee as per the council's policy, so we can make sure when we go forward to other projects that we don't actually find ourselves in the same position. Because members of this committee have never seen the project that's been dumped effectively and replaced with this new project, and as a result of that, there's been delay after delay because we had a project that frankly the public didn't want to happen, and it was never agreed by any member of this committee. So there are real issues around the whole decision-making process around this particular project that I would like to see scrutinised in detail by the scrutiny committee, so we can go on to future projects such as the White Sands and make sure we don't actually have a repeat of this. I have to say that the consultation in the White Sands project has been very different than the consultation around the Burn Statue project. I think it's been good consultation around the White Sands. I think it's going to be important because there will be some controversial decisions to be made in the future around car parking, etc. And we have to keep taking the public with us. And that, in my view, is a contrast to what's happened over Burn Statue, where local residents were suddenly just a few weeks ago landed with a scheme that frankly they had never seen before, and this committee had never seen before. So there's real lessons to be learned.
I'll just pick up on the first point with Derek in regards to scrutiny performance committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, position is the Council does have a policy, and that is that quite clearly where there is 10% slippage or indeed 50,000 over the 3-month period that Councillor Smith referred to, that is the policy. Indeed, it was recently raised at Policy and Resources just last month, 20th of June, where the committee agreed to receive a report on the criteria which will be applied in referring slippage in capital projects to the Scrutiny and Performance Committee. So quite clearly, the position as it stands is the 10%, 50,000, but Policy and Resources recognise there is clearly a need for that criteria to be looked at, and that will be a report to Scrutiny and Performance Committee.
Thanks so much for that, Derek. Director, do you have anything to add, or do you want to point in a certain direction?
Acknowledge Councillor Smith's representations, and obviously there's the project, and there's obviously the bus services that we have in and around Dumfries, and we've consulted very closely with Stagecoach in preparing this project. To take buses out of Burn Statue area, you have to put them somewhere else. As we go forward with the White Sands project, we'll have to think of the same issues. So it's a holistic approach to look at all bus services around Dumfries as we move forward with these two projects. I did undertake to arrange a meeting with Stagecoach for Dumfries councillors and the chair and the leader and deputy leader, and we haven't been able to do that as yet because of leave arrangements in Stagecoach, but we still intend to do that so we can have a general discussion and let members put their views. On the way forward, well, I'll leave that to members' discretion and I'll be guided by members.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith, you're the only person on the card at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, the issue around Stagecoach is an important one because we seem to have a position whereby Stagecoach can dictate to us exactly where their buses will stop. Now, of course, they're the ones that decide in a commercial service what buses they run, but presumably, as a guardian of our roads and bus stops, etc., we decide where you can actually park a bus and not. One of the important points is that we want to see cars being removed from that area. And I think that's a really important point. If you stand at Burnstatue Square any day, you know, people use it as a drop-off point. They nip out to the cash machine, they drop their DVD off, and it's a car park, frankly, and that needs to stop. And I very much welcome the fact that we're going to look at how we can actually stop that happening. But likewise, there are too many buses there. And you know, we should be being stronger with Stagecoach and saying to them that, frankly, there are too many buses stopping at this bus stop, and we're not going to permit that number of buses actually being there. And actually, it would be more convenient for passengers, certainly in Heathhall Lockerbiggs area, where if they left from both the same place. So, I mean, I don't understand Stagecoach's position. I think it's really important we have that meeting as soon as possible. We stop having a position whereby Stagecoach dictate to this council exactly what our public realm looks like and decide that one of our iconic areas of the town should be nothing more than a parking place for their buses. I think there's still an issue of the temporary arrangements in terms of buses, because one of the objections that was coming in was from businesses in Castle Street over safety concerns over, I think there are a lot of cellars in Castle Street. In fact, one collapsed not that long ago because of the weight of traffic on there. And I think there was a concern that if you made that a bus route, there would be a lot of heavy vehicles on there. And that's actually what's still proposed for the temporary arrangement. So I would ask for an assurance that we've looked at the temporary arrangements and we're satisfied that the additional buses on Castle Street are, you know, we've looked at all the safety aspects of that, because that was obviously something that came out of the recent consultation over the traffic orders. But we really need to get to grips with the whole issue around Stagecoach, because frankly they're dictating to this town exactly where they park their buses.
Certainly pick up on that point. Is it for yourself or Jason for the...
If I could just say something about buses in the first instance, it's not that they dictate. I mean, they have a network that works at the moment from their point of view, and that it's a commercial network, and they can operate it as a commercial network. They're not asking the council to subsidise it in any way. We have to support buses. Buses are absolutely integral to getting people into the town, to make it busy, etc. And it's not a case of them dictating, it's a case of working with them to get the best result for our public. Buses are extremely important to move people about, and you can see the footfall that it brings at that end of the town, and at the moment there is no other solution for that, but we have to work forward considering the White Sands and what we're going to do and how that's going to affect the whole town in the future.
Important, they're incredibly important, and I think, as any resident staying in Heathhall Lockerbiggs area would say, wouldn't it be really convenient for me that I could get a bus at the same bus stop instead of having to decide to go between two bus stops, which used to be the case, and frankly Stagecoach would get more people using the buses if they had a bit more of a joined up approach to this. We just had a report previously that showed that the use of buses in Dumfries town had fallen, and maybe that's something that Stagecoach need to start reflecting on, that people aren't using the buses as much as they used to be. And I think we go back to the days when the department in West Strands proposed having a bus station round the corner from Burnstatue. That would have added additional time to the travel for the Stagecoach buses that go to Burnstatue at the moment. At that time, Stagecoach were happy with that. But all of a sudden, they're now saying they're not happy with adding any additional time onto the travel away from Burnstatue. So, I mean, I just don't understand where Stagecoach are coming from. I mean, you know, it's important to work with them, but that's a two-way process, not a one-way process. And at the moment, it is a one-way process that a bus company is dictating to the council over these particular projects, because frankly, it is a big bus stop at the moment, and that's all it is.
We'll make sure that meeting happens. Councillor Martin, you're next.
It's quite concur with most of the things that have been said so far. As I say, it seems pretty bizarre as I say, when Colin's saying you've got the Locker Briggs and Heath Hall buses leaving for two different bus stops, yet in Great King Street, you've got the Georgetown and the Lockvale bus leaving for the same place. If people can do exactly the same, use either or. So it seems pretty bizarre the Heath Hall bus has got to leave for a different stop. Just saying, this project was meant to start in February. It was meant to start in February and it got delayed with different things. But the traffic orders weren't put in till, I think it was May or early June. So don't understand what the delay, why the traffic orders were not put in when the project was meant to start in February. But there, and as I say, it was an 11th hour when this come through, and it was mostly, as you've been saying, the Irvine Street, the one way there, which could have major impacts, as Colin says, on the sellers on Castle Street, because you've only got one way. The only way out of that side of the town, the Castle Street, George Street area, would be along Castle Street. You wouldn't have the option of going along Irvine Street. So there would be a lot of more traffic going then, even after the temporary buses had stopped going round Charlotte Street, George Street, Castle Street. That was the thing. So as I say, it was just 11th hour, and as I say, it seems that the consultation, we were told that the consultation by residents had taken place, the extensive consultation, and yet it was only an article in the Courier, more or less, that the residents of Irvine Street actually realised what was happening. And I must say, I've never had as many phone calls, emails, etc. after it was published, because they didn't seem to have any idea of what was taking place. In fact, they were actually saying that they were getting letters through their letterbox telling them what was happening on Sunday after the article appeared in the Courier, which, if that is consultation, it's just not satisfactory.
Yeah, well, that's just a recap of what's occurred, and this report addresses these issues. On the safety issues, do have assurances that using the temporary diversion is safe as far as the underground issues are concerned. On the consultation, I'll let Jason come in, because we did consult on this extensively. And Jason, if you could say a few words on that, thank you.
Yeah. I'd just like to sort of pick up on the last points, really, about the TROs. That they are also part and parcel of the consultation process. And prior to that, in the previous sort of 12 months, we've had gradual consultation with a variety of different partners on this. That includes the Community Council, it includes the traders, and it also includes the community. But unfortunately, we stand here talking about consultation processes, and after 30 years' experience in regeneration, I haven't yet come across a perfect one. There are some very good ones, and the charrette process that we use for the White Sands is probably the best model that I can think of in terms of involving the maximum number of people. But we weren't in that position with this particular project, but we did carry out extensive consultation. As I say, with the Community Council, with the traders, with local people. We had a 2-day drop-in session in November last year, where we invited all the local people to come along and visit those plans. Now, we can invite who we like, and we can send out as many invitations as we like, but it doesn't guarantee that everybody's going to turn up. And in my experience, when you do letter drops to individual houses and they realise that works are imminent, suddenly they become very interested, whereas previously they weren't that interested. So we can't cater for every eventuality on consultation. I think we have been quite robust with the consultation that we've had. We've had quite a lot of buy-in from local people. Quite a lot of the local traders are in strong support of this project, as indeed are the traders. But unfortunately, when we advertised the traffic orders for Irving Street, George Street and Castle Street, those people who were directly affected became very vocal about it because it affects them directly. I think that's just a fact of life. We have to deal with that, and we have dealt with it by responding positively to the comments that came back. We have moved back from the position of having a one-way system on Irving Street, and we've reverted back to the clockwise circulation around the square. There was no way that we could have implemented an anti-clockwise circulation around the Burn statue without having to use Irving Street and George Street. And that comes off the back of the fact of very lengthy, detailed conversations, if not negotiations with Stagecoach, about how they manage their timetables. They recognise that they've got a lot of work to do there, but they needed the escape route around Irving Street in the eventuality that the Burn statue area becomes very busy. We were hoping that actually that would become a very infrequent route for them to take, but it couldn't be guaranteed. It certainly wouldn't have been a regular route around the back. Buses wouldn't have been travelling around the back of that area all of the time. It was simply going to be used as an escape route in times of congestion when the buses aren't guaranteed of getting into the Burn statue area in order. And that's because we don't have a full-time bus lane in the town. We have a part-time one. Stagecoach's argument is that they can't guarantee that their routes come into the town in a certain order because that bus lane is part-time.
Thank you very much for that, Chair. Just as I say, I don't think anyone's most of us and members have got anything against the plans. It was just actually the one-way in Irving Street. Even if I'd went along to the consultation, they had events that they had in November, I knew nothing about a proposed one-way on Irving Street, because us as members, we didn't know anything about that till even, I think it was April, May, when the road traffic orders, we first got sight of them. So for to say the consultation, if you'd went along in November, you'd have knew about Irving Street, is just completely crazy.
I think I've seen Councillor Nicholson, to see your hand up there. No, then
there's been a few comments about the bus lanes and that, and that's another load of twaddle as well, because obviously Jason wasn't here at the time when the bus lanes, where there is only one bus lane, and that's in Glasgow Road, which doesn't service Heath Hall buses, so it's nothing to do with Heath Hall buses, it's nothing to do with any others. The most delays that's happening, they actually did a survey before, or when the change to the bus lane came about, and there was no delays, it was like a second or something like that. So the bus operators, or the managers at that time, says, well, we thought it was going to make a difference, but it's not going to make a difference. I know Jason wasn't here at the time, he doesn't know the history, but making statements like that doesn't actually, isn't the facts. Most of the delays, in fact, I just mentioned some of the buses, from Lochvale and that, there's no bus lane, it's from the other side of the town. It's nothing to do with anything about bus lanes or part-time bus lanes or anything like that, so.
Councillor McClellan Smith.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've listened to the complaints regarding the consultation and the Western, or Stagecoach as they now are, not listening to the council. However, I would have to say that is not actually the report we have in front of us. It's to consider whether we're going to agree the project that's outlined in the plan. I think we should move on to that.
Councillor Smith, last point.
I'm more than happy to change that if you want to have a debate on that issue as well, because the fundamental problem is the number of buses, and that's why the plans have been revised, because of buses. So the two are connected. And I take great exception, I have to say, to being told that, frankly, the problem wasn't really the consultation process, it was actually local residents who weren't waking up to the fact what was happening. This project was supposed to start in February. There were no proposals at all for traffic orders until April, May this year. Absolutely none whatsoever. I constantly asked for an assurance that no buses would go down Irving Street, Castle Street or George Street, and I was given that assurance time after time that wouldn't happen, and then absolutely out of the blue, residents receive letters, and we receive a letter saying, actually, these are going to be bus routes. It's got nothing to do with residents not waking up to the fact. It's the fact that this council came up with a proposal right at the last minute, after they had consulted and told, frankly, nobody about it until after the work was supposed to start. Now, that's not consultation. A two-day event at Greyfriars Church, which I, as a local member, knew nothing whatsoever about until I happened to walk down the street the day after it and notice the sign-up, is not, frankly, consultation. The Community Council were told we're consulted. Well, frankly, they were against the anti-clockwise route that was being proposed. So I don't understand why you can consult with somebody who are against it and then say they're on board. We've got conflicting arguments from the police who turn up at a community council meeting and say for safety reasons they are absolutely against what the council were proposing, yet we as councillors were told the police were on board. We're told that local traders were on board with it, yet when I speak to local traders, they actually said that they were appalled that this was going to take place during the summer period. So we're getting conflicting stories here. And that's why I think looking at this at scrutiny is absolutely crucial, because actually I don't think we're being told exactly what happened in terms of the consultation process. Particularly, I have to say that we were being told one thing over traffic going around certain streets, and at the last minute we had a new policy on the table. So I welcome these changes, but frankly, it seems to me the department are not listening to what we're saying when it comes to our concerns over the consultation process. We're simply being told that actually the problem with the consultation process is the local residents didn't wake up until the last minute.
I think we'll bring the Director in one point in regards to the police, and then we'll move on to, because I think there's a relevant place for the Scrutiny Performance Committee to look into this. We're talking about a lot of stuff that really they should be looking at if that's the decision that we make. So, Director?
Yeah, just on the police matter, and this was raised when I met local members. We had a high-level meeting with the police and had support from the police for this project. The policeman who turned up at the community council was a community policeman, and I think he was more concentrating on issues like CCTV, not road safety issues. And the road safety issues we had cleared with the senior police officers involved. And I have since taken that up with the police on that matter and been given an apology for that. To go on to consultation, you've heard what Jason says, there's no perfect consultation. We must get consultation right. And I'm looking at other means to engage the public by the use of rather drawings, digital photographs, and our proposals drop down in front of these digital photographs, so we can use Twitter, we can use Facebook, we can use all sorts of modern technology to try and pull the public in to see the changes we're going to make in these projects. So I give you an undertaking that we will do everything we can to improve the engagement process.
2.1 is to note the issues and concerns raised in relation to the project is outlined in section 4.4, which I think we have. 2.2 is to consider the recommendation from Nithsdale Area Committee. Business meeting in relation to the project outlined 4.6. That's something that nobody's touched on whatsoever. I think in regards to that, I think rather than that, could we actually put that, change that to the Scrutiny Performance Committee? Not as per what's been agreed. Nithsdale Area Committee has actually asked that the Burn Statue and Environment Impact project not be progressed to the award of tender stage until the proposals were brought back to Nithsdale Area Committee. I'm certainly not in agreement with that in regards to, but I think further scrutiny should be taken in regards to the process, how we got here in the first place, as what has been outlined. 2.3 is to agree that, to proceed with the project as outlined in section 4.7, which is, we've been through that certainly in great detail. And I think there's a reference to Scrutiny Performance Committee. We could pick up at that point. Derek, I'll come to you for advice on that, please.
Thank you, Chairman. My understanding is that on the basis of the proposals before members today, they are in agreement with the project now proceeding. Therefore, it's now a retrospective consideration. We've already heard comments from officers and members. Therefore, there's consideration now needs to be given in terms of the Council's own scheme of administration, delegations to officers and members, the member officer protocol, and I would suggest, therefore, that in terms of the Council's own policy, that as part of recommendation 2.3, in light of your discussion today, that you also include the decision to recommend the project, including the background, the consultation issues, to the Scrutiny Performance Committee, where this could be given full hearing and debate.
Thanks very much for that. Thank you. Item number 14 is, unless you want some clarity on that.
Yeah, I appear to have amended 2.2 without actually telling us what you've amended to. I mean, I'm quite happy for it to go back in this Area Committee because it involves local members and they can give their views on the final design. What we're being told today is this project won't actually go ahead and now until 2014. Now we've got a kind of sketch on the screen. We don't have any final detailed proposals. I would have thought that it would be perfectly logical for members on this Area Committee to see that so that they can determine whether or not the concerns they raised are being reflected, and actually also give the public the opportunity to come along and see the final detailed proposals as well. So I don't understand why you're removing 2.2, but I agree that with 2.1, 2.3 and the matter being referred to the Scrutiny Committee, I'm just curious as to what's going to happen between now and 2014 is that the end of it? It would seem logical that we actually get out there and show the public what we're proposing, and one route to do that's in this Area Committee.
What I'll do, I mean, that's a valid point. I'll ask Derek for advice in regards to that, but also we need to take into consideration timelines in regards to, is it actually possible, what effect would it have on the start date in January 2014. So, Derek, your advice first, then either Alistair or Jason after that.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the role of approving this project, it's clearly this committee. So my understanding is that the clear view of the committee is you're now approving the project. The Area Committee has a role in monitoring the project. Given the timescales involved, as you've said, it's not starting until the new year. There certainly would seem reasonable that there's an opportunity to bring a report for the Area Committee for noting the decision of this committee and indeed the agreed proposal. But that's very much in the hands of the Director, but certainly in the spirit of the role of the Area Committee, it's not for them to agree the projects, for this committee, but they do have a role in monitoring the local project.
And just to pick up on my point before either Alistair or Jason comes in, I think as referred to, which is an extraction, I think, from the minute at 4.6, I couldn't agree with that, but I'm not fundamentally against maybe a monitoring report or an update report coming to the Area Committee so you can see the detail of how it's progressing, how it's moving forward, but we'll take the view of either the Director or Jason.
Right, well, I think the fact that the committee is approving to go ahead with the project, I think we need to go back out to the public and basically advise them what the changes are and re-establish the consultation process, re-engage them so that everybody understands perfectly what we're going to do, and I would suggest that we have an update report following that consultation.
And I think that's appropriate before I bring Councillor Ogilvie in. Ronnie?
Thanks, Chair. I totally agree with everything, so I'm not going to interfere with all that. But our debate there has raised a governance issue for me. If an area committee asks such as 4.6, and if it's not, in your opinion, legitimate, then it should never come before us, because then we've got a conflict. Either area committees have a right and a role to play, or we don't. If governance had said, yep, that's appropriate, we'll put that up to the service committee, but you're saying you don't like it and it shouldn't, and you would never accept it. But so I'm asking the question: is there a role for area committees through the service committees? Because I've asked this at area committees, you know, because sometimes you say stuff and it never appears anywhere. So I really just want to leave it with Derek, Chair, where we stand with two-way communication between a service committee and an area committee, and vice versa.
I'll certainly start the answer though, Ronnie, as far as what's being proposed here is for the project to stop, and that's what I said I was against. I wasn't actually against area committees making recommendations to any service or corporate committee. I'm all for it actually, because it's a better involvement, certainly scrutiny at a local level. But what I've asked for is for what the area committee was asking for, and what I've been talking to the local members in that, where the Burn statue in the award is the actual, they're looking for monitoring updates. They want to see how it's progressed. They've been reference to where have we seen it before, local members, and strategic level as well in regards to the detail. I think, Derek, you can come in and cap it off if you want, but I certainly wasn't, I didn't say it was not a legitimate request. It's just absolutely clear that I couldn't agree with that, because it would hold the project up, it would stop it. So therefore, if it's a monitoring update going back through the consultation process, which the directors alluded to, I'd be happy to support that. But Derek, have you anything to add?
Just to confirm the point that's raised to yourself, Chair, what I would advise members is clearly it's for area committees to bring forward recommendations where they think there's been a failure in the implementation of policy. That would come to the appropriate committee, and it's here today for this committee to determine. The understanding I have, subsequent to the report at the area committee, the proposals have in fact been amended, and therefore there seems to be agreement with these proposals, and therefore going forward it's quite clear there's no need to stop the work. It's a matter now this committee is comfortable with, it's approved. Retrospectively, though, there is clearly, through scrutiny, a need to learn lessons, and we can do that. Secondly, there is the opportunity for the area committee to now monitor the implementation of this project, and that can be done before the delivery next year.
Thanks for that. So, anybody else got anything else? I think we've just, if you give us a sum up, please, Derek. I think we've agreed 2.1. We have 2.2 was to consider the recommendation from the Nestdale Area Committee business meeting in relation to section 4.6. I think we've considered that, and we've just remind us of the decision we made at that point.
Thank you. You've clearly noted the position, but the updated position on Nestdale in terms of paragraph 4.7, therefore that takes precedent over that, and therefore paragraph 2.3, my understanding is you've agreed firstly to acknowledge there's lessons to be learned for the Scrutiny and Performance Committee to therefore take a look at this project, and secondly, given the timescales for the project, there's an opportunity for this project to be brought for information to Nestdale Area Committee before implementation.
Thank you very much. Time is 12:57 according to that, so I think we'll break for lunch. We'll come back to item number 14. Thank you very much. Got an HRH visit. As far as I'm aware, so he'll not be here. I don't think he'll be back until later if he's back. And the rest are working their way back. As long as we leave that door open, I think that's the main thing. So, item 14 is strategic consultation on works on Scottish roads. Director, anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Well, the recommendations are there. It says members are asked to agree to the response indicated in the consultation document as per the appendix. Councillor Carson?
I'm not sure whether it's appropriate to bring it up here or not, but it's come to light that on numerous occasions where there's been roadworks and resurfacing as a result of the road being dug up, the white lines or the double yellow lines or whatever not being reinstated by whoever dug the road up. I just wanted confirmation of whether it was the council's responsibility to replace the yellow lines or the contractor who's actually dug up the road, because we've got instances in New Galloway where there's numerous areas in the town where the traffic, the parking regulations can't be enforced because the yellow lines are broken in numerous different places. Is that something that the contractor should be replacing, or is it the council's responsibility to maintain those?
As far as I understand, in relation to excavations and reinstatements, it would be the contractor's responsibility. You sometimes see that they're done with a kind of stick-on tape type approach, which has been developed for these short lengths of road and that sort of situation. If there's specific examples or locations, I'm happy to pass those on to colleagues in DG First, or I would suggest contact them directly. They supervise these things, but at the end of the day, it's down to the contractors working for the utility companies to reinstate it. If there's a number going on in the same community, it might be that they're waiting until the whole community is finished and then get a lining contractor in to deal with it in that way.
Thanks for that. Councillor Smith?
I just wonder why in our response we oppose the idea of charging utility companies. I appreciate that the document refers primarily to Scottish cities, etc., and it's not that relevant to this region, but I always thought that particularly when a utility company goes beyond their period of time, and we've got one at the moment, the White Sands in Dumfries, where they're applying for an extension to their time. Now that's causing quite a bit of disruption, and the last thing we need is for that to be extended, but they're applying for an extension and we effectively are going to rubber stamp that extension. Why? You know, I always thought it would be a good idea that when they go beyond the original time at the very least, we should charge utility companies for that, but we seem to be kind of in a response against the idea of that happening.
Thank you. The response that the responses that we have in this paper have been drafted in conjunction with colleagues in DG First, who supervise this matter on a kind of a day-to-day basis. The impression I've picked up from them is that they try very much to work with the utilities and their contractors to try and encourage progress and to deal with matters in that way. That you know, rather than to go down the route of seeking to impose fines, and I think that what they're trying to establish is a good working relationship with these companies. And I suppose the fear might be that if it becomes just you're a day late, here's a fine, that their cooperation might be withdrawn. But that's only my assumption in regard to that. But as I understand it, it's very much trying to work with these people. There are options and processes available to seek action against these companies if there are significant delays, and it might be that we're not using that to the fullest extent. But again, I think it's a case of trying to work with these companies in a cooperative approach at the present time.
Wouldn't a daily charge act as a bit of a good incentive for a company to actually carry out the work quite quickly? I mean, the one in the White Sands is probably the busiest road in the town. There's no weekend working at all. There's no nighttime working. They've been delayed in that particular project. There's no incentive at all for that company to actually bring that project in on time. It doesn't matter to them whether there's disruption or not. So, I mean, I just think, would it not act as an incentive and actually an income generator, if you like, to look at that whole issue?
The council does have a list of traffic sensitive roads, and I would imagine that the White Sands is on that. That's a list that certainly needs to be reviewed and updated. Obviously there would be a cost to these companies for carrying out 24-hour work, etc. The works that I've seen that are ongoing on the White Sands only started last week or the week before, and they seem to, in my eye, making really good progress. But I think the situation may be where works that are started and then abandoned, essentially, or that's how it appears, and the company disappears, and it might be a week or two before they actually come back. I think when a company is making good progress, that again we're back to this kind of cooperation approach, and you know they do have to register their works on the Street Works Register, and to seek agreement to their timing. So I think we are trying to work with these companies on a cooperative basis.
I think there is a charging policy as well when it comes to road opening permits. I think that would certainly be a driver as well. Of course, they've got their own personal profit as an organisation, but we do charge through the road opening permits that we supply, and if they go over a certain point in time, I think we charge more.
As far as I'm aware, the road opening permit wouldn't apply to the utility companies. That's in a kind of different situation.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. 2 questions. I'm confident I know the answer to one of them, but I'll ask John anyway. My understanding is to be able to put double yellow lines on a road, you need to promote a road traffic order and have that approved by the Scottish Government. Therefore, you can't remove it without submitting a request to amend the road traffic order. So whoever removes the double yellow lines will actually be in breach of a road traffic order, whether it be the council or the operating company for Transport Scotland. It will be, I think, a case of you need an order to place all these things, the same as speed bumps, and you need another order to remove them again. So I think I would ask John if that's right, because that's my understanding. The other thing that troubles me, and it's troubled me for a long time, is when the utility companies come and dig up and do repairs, they do it everywhere. It's the substandard reinstatement that bothers me, because as sure as fate, 6 months or a year down the line, folk like me are onto our council staff saying you're going to have to come up here and fix this road or footway because it has collapsed or it's in a very poor state. And I don't know whether there's an opportunity for us to engage with these companies to see if DG First can get the contract on every occasion, which might be a bit challenging, but there'll be a bidding process. But you know, it'd be much easier if DG First worked with utility companies and actually did the reinstatement for them, because then there'd be no third party involvement and no difficulty in trying to unravel what is a challenging situation for us all. Not to mention the fact that we go and resurface a road in the following week, somebody comes and digs it up. That happens on countless occasions, and there's supposed to be a planning process whereby we notify our utility companies if we've got to resurface what we describe as a major thoroughfare, and within a certain period of months they come and dig it up. So I think we need to smarten up on that as well.
I'll get the Director to pick up on this, and if there's any other bits that the Director wishes, you can go to John at that point.
In relation to double yellow lines, I think what we're discussing, Councillor Dempster, is the fact that an excavation may take part of that yellow line system out. There's no need to place an order or anything. An excavation that takes the whole length of the double yellow line out, it's the same instance. There's no need to apply to deregulate. The issue is that the reinstatement, that contractor should replace the yellow lines as they were before. And that is commonplace. It's the same with our traffic calming, where we have red surface, or where we have rondels. It's the responsibility of the utility or the contractor to replace that as soon as possible.
Chair, with your indulgence, it wasn't about that. That just triggered a train of thought for me. What's happened in my area is the road's been resurfaced and double yellow lines are away and have not been put back. I was just asking about the legislation in relation to permission to put double yellow lines down, and whether or no there was a requirement either to deregulate or put them back. It was nothing to do, it just triggered a thought with the question Finlay asked. This is a stretch of roadway where there were double yellow lines. The road's been resurfaced for 2 years and have been removed and never been reinstated.
Well, it's likely that order still exists. It's still on statute, and if you can point out offline where this area is, we'll get it dealt with as a matter of urgency.
You'll know can because it's a trunk road. I'm just asking. Come
on, Councillor Dempsey. There's nothing to do with this, Council.
I'm asking about legislation, and it'll be the same as a trunk road or a main thoroughfare. I'm simply asking about legislation. That was my question. And as a professional officer, I'm sure he will have to hand the information. If no, then now he'll certainly can provide me with it. That's all I was asking. I wasn't saying it was the council was at fault. I was asking about legislation.
Yeah, I think if it refers to trunk roads, and therefore it's Scottish Government's Transport Scotland's problem, is the MBA Roads Authority. If it's absolutely the 1991 roads traffic streets and highways, is it Streetworks Act covers that. Yep. So any points that you'd like to cover haven't been covered, John.
Thanks, Chair. With regard to substandard reinstatements, there is an inspection process, and the failure rates within this authority are monitored, and I'm advised that there are discussions, performance of utilities and the contractors is discussed at quarterly meetings with at a local coordination meeting. If the reinstatement is substandard and fails, I'm sure that the cost of addressing that failure falls to the company itself, so it's in their own interest to make the reinstatement good in the first instance. If it's not satisfactory, it's for them to go back and to make good their failings. With regard to recently surfaced roads and those being dug up, the information in this consultation speaks that there's a year period before the roads should be re-excavated, but within the code of practice, the roadworks community has recognised that that's too short and has voluntarily adopted a 3-year period. I suppose that there must always be circumstances where there is some reason why that has to be disregarded, but that is the code of practice agreed with the utility companies.
Can I just ask you, is John saying that if we identify a substandard repair, do we instruct the utility company to come back, or do we reinstate it and bill them for the work and raise that as a performance indicator when we meet?
I think that depends on the timeline primarily, but John, it's for you to answer.
Yeah. It's not my area of specific responsibility, but I'm sure in the first instance, if a reinstatement fails within the time periods, that the first port of call is to go back to that company and ask them to make it good.
I think the first year's without doubt, the second year's up for argument. That's what the kind of rule of thumb is. Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. And possibly just on the back of that, and some information too, regarding the utilities, because this document is about all the utilities digging up our roads, well, Scottish roads in particular. But DG First has just recently entered into a contract with Scottish Water with reference to inspections and reinstatements, etc., of the works that they carry out within our area. And I was wondering if such a contract would or could be applied to the other utilities companies as well. I mean, I appreciate, again, there is a tender process and all that would have to go through, but if the opportunity was there, then that might answer some of the questions that's been put forward here and allay some of the fears. But another point on that as well, I mean, this document has already been submitted, and John mentioned before that the answers that we've put into this have been in consultation with DG First. And I'm quite sure, but I would just like reassurance from the Director that there would be no conflict of interest here by DG First because they were entering into this contract with Scottish Water in the first place.
No, I don't think that there's any necessary conflict of interest. I mean, it's very much their contracting arm that's doing that work, and they also have their public utility and inspectors that go around. So I'm sure that the arrangements are such that there's no conflict of interest. As far as other utilities are concerned, that's up to the Director of DG First whether he wishes to pursue these contracts, but they obviously are advertised and come out regularly, and it's a business decision whether they follow that.
Yeah, it's just a point that, you know, might sort of allay Councillor Dempster some of his fears, because that was part of the point that he was bringing in as well. But DG First have already entered into that with Scottish Water.
I think that's maybe the second thing. It's maybe a 2 or 3 year contract. It's the second time they've managed to be successful with that. But in regards to the consultation, we're happy with the response contained within the appendix. Okay, thanks for that. Item number 15 is cancellation of Article 4 directions. Steve, just before you move, Steve, I guess some sound is there, but okay, Director, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chair, thank you.
2.1, we're asked to approve the cancellation of all that. Councillor Prince, are you somebody try again? Go on.
Through you, Chairman, just understanding, just in the recommendation for members' awareness, I believe paragraph 2.1 we should be inserting at line 1 after extant household development directions. It's specifically these that we're intending to cancel.
Mr. Rogers, do you want to just clarify that?
Well, the intention, without wishing to dispute what's being said, the intention is set out in the recommendation as an alternative. We could indeed amend this to take out purely the householder developments from the Article 4 directions that are currently in place, but the intention was actually to scrap all of them.
Councillor Prentice.
Yeah. I think as far as I can understand, the problem with the wording at the moment is by making it all extant, it means that the council itself and the utility companies could come into these conservation areas and basically dig up the roads or do whatever they want without any prior permissions. If we go along with 2.1. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, that's correct.
I would therefore propose exactly what Mr. Crichton has said, to put that word in, you know, that prove the cancellation of Article 4 directions that restrict householder permitted development rights.
Okay, has anybody got any objections against that? And Mr. Rogers, would that be something that would be acceptable?
If that's the will of the committee, then that's fine. It doesn't create any particular issues from our point of view. We were simply recommending that we do away with the existing Article 4 directions and continue to develop our working links with other council departments in particular, to impress on them the importance of doing works within conservation areas to particular standards. But if we've got the added stick, if you like, of making them continue to go through a planning process, then you know, I'm happy to continue with that arrangement.
Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. Is there any reason why these particular communities are identified? I only ask that because there's a conservation area in Sanka, and it's not featured, and I just wonder if it's unique, this, to the communities that are identified here.
it's unique in that these are the only conservation areas where the council has previously promoted Article 4 directions and had them agreed by Scottish Government. The effect of the changes to legislation is actually to apply now the same level of control to all conservation areas, so we don't have to go through this process of designating Article 4 directions for householder developments in future.
Councillor Smith.
I just wonder if the consequence of the amendment to 2.1 to specify households actually then means that in 2.2 you'll have to continue to pursue the request to Scottish ministers for an Article 4 direction in relation to non-households, as opposed to just not commercial activity.
Yeah, that's actually correct, because effectively what we would be saying is rather than not proceeding with the Article 4 request for Whithorn, we would actually be altering it to reflect that change and then carrying out consultation and resubmitting it to Scottish ministers as before.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Thanks, Chair. Just reading the risk assessment, if we agreed the recommendations, the cancellation of the existing directions and not pursuing the direction of Whithorn are unlikely to cause significant detrimental impact. But in the Annan Regeneration Master Plan and in the local plan, the Annan area has a conservation area, and I'm sure other as well. Would this recommendation have an impact on our regeneration plan and the local development plan? It's a knock-on effect.
Yeah, it shouldn't have any impact on the regeneration plans for Annan or for any other communities. It's not changing the level of planning control that exists on householder developments. It's simply saying that we don't need a specific Article 4 direction to do it in future. So it should be neutral from the householder's perspective.
Councillor Dempster, then we'll go back to recommendations.
That's fine, because I was going to say that 3.3 probably deals with it, because it talks about householder development. It specifically makes no reference to commercial development, so there's obviously a reason for that, and I would presume that the recommendation will have dealt with that.
Okay, we're happy with the proposal that George put forward. And how does that affect 2.2 again, just remind me?
Madam Chairman, item 2.2 will therefore be specifically include the household development.
Thank you very much for that. National Planning Framework 3 and Consultative Draft Scottish Planning Policy. Director, pardon? Oh, sorry, I've skipped. Sorry about that. I'm too eager. That's it, sorry, so I've... That's why I was getting... Historic Environment Strategy and Merger of Scottish Government Key Agencies. Director, anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chair, thank you.
Talk to members then. Flurry of hands. That's a record. That sounds like a motion. Councillor McClung.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's regarding a couple of the answers on page 268. In the second answer down, starting all are important, there is an inclusion in there. It says, example, what plans are there for Sheriff Courts in Stranraer and Kirkcudbright that are key listed buildings in the towns after closure? To my knowledge, Stranraer Sheriff Court isn't closing. They're only moving the sheriff and juries. Stranraer Sheriff Court will still remain open. And on page 271, on the bottom answer box, the second last paragraph, it says the Whithorn Trust, which works closely with Historic Scotland in respect of promoting joint assets, is also currently facing closure. My understanding is they are rearranging their business plan to survive. There is no current facing closure. They're rearranging their business plan to become viable.
Chair, we can certainly adjust the wording of those two answers to reflect the actual position. It might be better, for example, in the first of those to just make reference to sheriff courts in general rather than specifying particular locations, because I think the issue is just one about lack of joined-up working or apparent lack of joined-up working between government departments. And we can certainly reword the response to reflect the position as outlined there with regard to the Whitehorn Trust.
Thank you. 271, the last box, last paragraph. So if we've took note of them, we've got the recommendations, which is we're asked to note the context of the historic environment strategy and of the proposed merger of Historic Scotland and the Royal Commission of Ancient and Historical Monuments of Scotland. To note that, and we are asked to agree the Council's response to the consultation as detailed appendix, subject to the amendments that's been asked for by Councillor McClung. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Right, yeah. I'm on the right one this time. National Planning Framework 3 and Consultative Draft Scottish Plan Policy. Director, again, have you got anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Members, it's up to members. I suppose the one point I'd like to pick up on, I feel there is potential in the Solway for tidal projects. I mentioned that in the past before. Unless I've missed it, I didn't pick up on it when I read through. If it wasn't, I would like that to be added. There's real potential there as we go forward. Maybe as an opening gambit for other members to come in. Would that be a possibility, Steve?
Certainly, Chair, I think the reference to the Solway Barrage was included in the first round consultation response that we provided. We can certainly add reference to that into the response this time round.
Yeah, I would quite like that. It was Solway Barrage, but there's two potential large projects on the Solway as it comes through in its relation to tidal renewable energy. So I think we may as well keep beating that drum to have any chance at it coming forward at some point. So this is the relevant point to raise it. Any other members got any other points in regards to Councillor McClung and Smith?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll get in my hobby horse again. Page 296, item 18 under heat and electricity. At the end of the first paragraph on community benefit, it states Dumfries and Galloway Council are strongly of the view that local authorities should have a role to play in helping supporting communities to take long-term view and for the Council to take a strategic approach to help managing benefits. I think that needs to be slightly reworded because the Council hasn't actually made a decision on whether we're going to be involved in managing the socio-economic fund.
I think we decided to split, and I think that's what the ad hoc committees, or the subcommittee, sorry, is working on at this moment, I think, but maybe get clear clarification on that. Steve?
Yeah, we can certainly have another look at the wording of this, but my understanding was that this reflected the current policy position, notwithstanding the review work that's ongoing. And I think the policy approach is that we will take support communities to help them take a long-term view and to take a strategic approach. The precise way in which that's done is probably beyond the scope of this response, and my understanding is that was the focus of the work that's currently being done. So it was intended that this should reflect current policy.
Would removing the word strongly help in any way? I mean, it says it's the Dumfries and Galloway Council, second paragraph, are strongly of the view that local authorities should have. They're certainly of the view, I think. Maybe I don't know if the omission of that would help or not. See what other members think, but primarily yourself, Jim, because you brought that up. Councillor Smith, then Denston, I'll come back to yourself, Jim.
Yeah, I think it's a good overall response. I mean, reading the MPF3, I mean, you know, if ever a document decided it was going to exclude Dumfries and Galloway, then this was it. I have to say, I mean, the decision not to include a single one of our projects in this region as national projects, I think it's appalling. The idea, the complacency of the Scottish Government to say that all the works around Loch Ryan are completed just because we have a new ferry terminal, when the reality is we haven't seen any significant improvements to the neighbouring roads, I think is appalling. I think likewise with other projects in relation to Chapel Cross, A74, all these projects that we put forward as potential national projects have been completely ignored by the Scottish Government, and I think that's appalling, and it's just another evidence that this region is completely forgotten by some of our politicians in Edinburgh. And I think it's really important that in our response that we hammer home the importance of these projects, not just to Dumfries and Galloway, but actually to Scotland. The whole Cairn Ryan project is absolutely vital to the economy of this region, but also right across Scotland as well. We have to keep trying to get that message across, and hopefully at some point in the future they'll listen to us. I'm interested though specifically on the response in relation to the 2.5 kilometres in wind farms. We're asking the question, you need to clarify what up to 2.5 kilometres actually means, but at the moment it says up to 2 kilometres, and that's what we use at the moment, so presumably we can interpret up to at the moment. So I'm just curious as to why we're saying please clarify what up to 2.5 kilometres actually means. And personally, I'd be quite happy to move this, personally I think we should be looking at a mandatory 2.5 kilometres, because at the moment, frankly, the 2 kilometres isn't mandatory and it's meaningless. And actually what we should be looking at is a mandatory 2.5 kilometres. I'm just wondering why we're asking the question when the reality is we've already got the answer in relation to how we interpret 2 kilometres. It's simply moving it from 2 kilometres up to 2 kilometres to up to 2.5 kilometres. That isn't the issue. The issue is that the 2.5 kilometres at the moment isn't mandatory, and it should be mandatory.
Chair, happy to provide some comments on that. The issue about the 2 metres or the 2.5 kilometres is, and whether they're mandatory or not, what we're talking about here is, to be clear, not an exclusion zone as such. It's simply a statement that's made in Scottish planning policy to say that within that zone that developers have to provide essentially additional justification, that there would be a presumption against development within that zone, but it's not a complete exclusion zone. And the key issue, I think, for us is that it doesn't really take any account of things like topography, because just to simply impose a blanket 2.5 kilometre or 2 kilometre restriction zone around a particular community, wind turbines that are on the other side of large landscape features or hills, for example, may not be visible at a distance of less than 2 or 2.5 kilometres. So I think this is why we're asking for that clarification, because it seems to us to be quite a crude approach in terms of trying to designate these areas.
At the moment it says up to 2 kilometres is what the current planning guidance says, and we're asking for clarification on what does up to mean. I'm not sure why we're asking for clarification on up to if we actually already have to implement a policy that says up to 2 kilometres. But I come back to the point, the fundamental, I take what we say about topography, but the fundamental point is that the current 2 kilometres and therefore the 2.5 kilometres is pretty much meaningless because it isn't mandatory. When you say developers have to justify it, well, they can find about pretty much any reason to justify it, and that's not really clear. Well, at the moment they can get round the 2 kilometres quite easily with some justification. The point I'm making is that the balance should be towards the exceptions, the absolute exceptions have to be within the 2.5 kilometres, and that's not really what's clear at the moment. It should be mandatory unless there is a really exceptional reason for it, and I think that's what the planning guidance should say, not what it currently says at the moment. But I'm curious as to why we're asking what up to means when we actually already have up to 2 kilometres in the current guidance.
Well, Chair, certainly that the reason, as I've just explained, is to get clarification on whether that excludes consideration of topography. If the will of the committee is that the wording of this element in our response is beefed up to make it absolutely clear that the view of this council is that within that zone there should be an absolute view taken that no development is going to be supported, then I'm happy to beef the wording up within the response.
I think what you're saying, my understanding of what you're saying is it's line of sight. If there's a great big hill between within 1.5 kilometres or within 2.5 kilometres, to be absolutely clear, if there's a great big hill that completely obstructs the view of a wind turbine, then is this 2.5 just based on the fact that it's flat ground around about a settlement? And what is a settlement? Is that like a small building group? Is that a village? That would be my question in the back of that. I'll just on the cusp, just on the cusp to try and do away with the visual impact. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. It's just that, I think the fact you brought it up is absolutely right. There is a lot of questions lying in the back of that 2.5 kilometres, but it's a valid point that Steve's certainly raising as far as topography. It could actually be a small scale turbine, even that's sitting behind a hill, still going to be enough wind there to generate electricity and have the recipients receive the benefit. But, I'm just putting my viewpoint across. It's the committee that decides, not me. I've got Councillor Dempster, then Tuckfield after that.
Thanks, Chair. 3.7 it resonates with me. It's on page 280, especially the bottom part of it where it talks about places that are no national scenic areas, but where developers are seeking large turbines to maximise returns regardless of the capacity of the landscape to accommodate them, and increasing emphasis is required to give more weight to landscape capacity studies. I hope if we haven't written that into our own policy yet, we do, because it's important to protect the environment. Unless we do it now, there is no going back, and that's just an observation. I'm sure Steve will deal with that if he's not already done that. The point I was wanting to raise was a point that I raised last Tuesday, and I realise all members weren't present. But I have concerns about this wind farm policy. I've always had concerns about it. And if you read 296.18, the bit that Councillor McClung referred to, it said developers are encouraged to voluntarily offer benefits to communities and to record benefit arrangements when the Scottish Government's register of community benefits. And the Dumfries and Galloway Council are strongly aligned with the view that local authorities should have a role to play in helping and supporting communities to take a long-term view, and for the Council to take a strategic approach to help managing benefits. Now that tells me, and we're saying this to the Scottish Government, that tells me we cannot impose this Section 75. Now I asked a week ago today for a written response that I've not yet got from Legal Services about the Council's position on where we are with imposing, and this is the word I used, imposing Section 75, and requiring was another word I used, requiring developers to sign up to this. Now I know we were told that they could voluntarily sign up. That was never the question. I need to know, because we have development officers going to community councils, and I can share with you minutes from my community council, some of them saying our development officer says that this is not imposable, if that's a real word. It cannot be imposed as a voluntary contribution. Now, we've been led to believe all along that we can require developers to pay 50% to the council and 50% to the community. But what I need to know, and it's not for today, it's the wrong forum, but it's reflected here in the response we sent to the Scottish Government. And we're saying we understand that they voluntarily give. That's what that says. So and I know Mr. Crichton will be very busy beavering away taking notes, but I want a response from Legal Services on whether or no this is something we can impose, and whether or not we can require developers to enter into the agreement that we look for them, or we have been looking for them to do voluntarily. There's a huge difference, and we are currently misleading community councils because they think it's voluntary and we think we can impose it. And we should not be leaving members of the community exposed the conflicting stories from a council that's a corporate body. So I'd be grateful, Chair, through the good office of Derek Crichton, if I could have that response sent to me in a written form. And I'm sure every other member of this committee would want it, although initially it was asked for simply to the members of the subcommittee dealing with wind farm benefits. But I think it's only fair that all members of the committee see what that written response is.
Thanks, Jim. We've got that reassurance at the subcommittee, and you will get that. But I think maybe there's potential. I mean, Steve is certainly well informed, to say the least, to give us an oversight on that. I think after what you've said, it's absolutely right that we do get that oversight in regards to Section 75, how enforceable and so on and so forth, because Steve certainly is it. But you'll get that in written form.
Can I just interrupt you, Chair, before Steve replies? It's also important we do it soon, because I have minutes that I can share where our officer went to a community council just a fortnight ago and gave them information that conflicts with what we understand. So I'd be grateful if it was
within a week, Jim.
Great.
Within a week. And Steve, if you could just touch on the subject, please.
Yeah, it's hopefully just to provide a little bit of clarification here in terms of what we're actually looking at, which is this is a draft planning policy proposal by the Scottish Government. So the wording that's contained in here, where we are restating essentially what is in the new draft Scottish planning policy, this wording is not in the current policy, and until this goes through consultation process and actually gets adopted by Scottish Government as policy, we will continue to operate under the current SPP regime. Okay, so the comments in here are comments on the Scottish Government's proposals to change the policy. With regard to our LDP and the policies contained within the LDP, obviously, again, those have been developed under the current regime of Scottish planning policy. But when we get to the point of reviewing our LDP, there will no doubt be this new SPP will have finished its process through Scottish Government and will be in force. So we'll be reviewing our wind energy policies, for example, in the new LDP to make sure that they fit with revised SPP, if you understand what I'm saying. With regard to the community benefit policy and Section 75s, I mean, the policy was agreed by PH&E, presented to PH&E and agreed in November of last year, and that policy still stands. We took advice from legal services who assured us that this is a perfectly legal and legitimate approach. One point I just wanted to clarify, though, in terms of what Councillor Dempster was saying there, he was making reference to requiring developers to pay this 50-50 split. Well, the split itself that's a matter for the council to decide how it wants to operate that. The policy that we're implementing through planning is simply to say that the community benefits will be secured through a Section 75 agreement. We're not dictating through planning what that should look like. That's the policy setting role of PH&E, and that's now being reviewed by the subcommittee that's sitting to review that approach.
Chair, I want to beg your indulgence because it bothers me, and it's about it will be secured by a Section 75 agreement. That's right. If you speak to the wind farm companies and they agree, my question is, if they say no, I'm sorry, we are going to submit a plan application and we're going to deal directly with the communities, can we stop their development taking place at any stage, whether it's and I'm not, and that's where smoke and mirrors keep coming into my mind, and I can't help that. I don't want this to be confused. I want to know if the wind farm company resist an approach from the council and say they do not want to enter into any Section 75 agreement with the council. They may well wish to sign a Section 75 agreement, but direct the money in a different direction. I'm saying, can we stop that? Do we have the power of law to say, you are not going to put that wind farm installation on hill ABC unless you do DEF. That's my question. It's not about what Section 75 secures, because once you sign a Section 75, you enter into a legal binding agreement, and I know that. It's the process to get there that troubles me. And what happens if the developer says, no, I'm not interested in the Section 75 itself. What I don't want is us to get into a situation where we are misleading developers, we're misleading the company, or companies, and we are doing so knowing full well that we don't have the power of the law behind us if the company resists.
Well, we'll get this in absolute detail back to you through within a week with reassurance, but I mean, I think and rather than come back to Steve, we'll try and stick as strongly to this report as we can, because you will get that back, Jim, you absolutely will. And I've already got we've already touched on this as many times. Yep, everybody, I think the whole committee will get that, yep, absolutely. Right, I've got Councillor Tuckfield and McClung. I've no other hands up. No. And that's what I just said. No, come back. I'll get your question answered in writing. Councillor?
I'm happy with that, aye.
Councillor Tuckfield and McClung. Okay, thanks very much for picking up on that point. Councillor McClung?
Yeah, that's just to expand on Councillor Tuckfield regarding the non-investment of roads by the Scottish Government. Since the present Scottish Government took over, there's been numerous road improvements on the A75 and the A77, all within 25 mile of Cairnryan, oblique Stranraer, which was a marked difference from the previous government.
We'll go back to page 296. We'll go back to page 296 to the point that was brought up. In the first paragraph, second half, it says, Dumfries and Galloway Council are strongly of the view. Can we take up the word strongly? We're happy with that as it goes forward. So Dumfries and Galloway Council are of the view that local authorities should have a role to play in helping and supporting communities to take a long-term view for the council, take a strategic approach to help maintain benefits. Okay, thank you. We'll cover that point. Any other points that we picked up on? Take the word strongly out. Just Councillor Smith, certainly come back to that.
I mean, I'm a wee bit surprised to hear the local members campaigning against the council campaigning for improvements to the local roads. I mean, the point being made in this document is that the Scottish Government have excluded reference to the need for investment in A75, A77. Officers are rightly saying that should be included, and I'm just absolutely astonished to hear two local members say that we shouldn't be campaigning for improvements to the local roads. For information, the A75 goes from Stranraer and Cairnryan all the way to the border, and you might not want money spent. You might not want, sorry, it goes to Stranraer, then the A77 goes to Cairnryan, but if you actually think there's enough investment in those roads, then you go out and tell the public that, because frankly they won't believe a word you say. But I want to come back to the issue, and I don't think members are fully appreciating what this NPF3 actually means for this region. In this document, we're talking about protecting 31% of the wildest and most scenic land from wind farm development. That's frankly almost irrelevant to Dumfries and Galloway, because we have no national parks and we've only got a very small amount of so-called scenic land. Therefore, if you protect the 31% from wind farm development, then what you're actually doing is making the other 69% pick up a higher proportion of wind farms. There's absolutely no doubt, as a result of this NPF3 from the Scottish Government, there will be more wind farm proposals coming to Dumfries and Galloway than we've got at the moment, and I don't think that's appropriate, because we're not being given the same protection. So I think that the response in here in relation to what in the Scottish Government to revisit that, I think is entirely appropriate, and I do think we need to strengthen the issue around the 2.5 kilometres, because frankly, as things currently stand, it is meaningless, just like the 2 kilometres is currently meaningless, and we need to be saying very strongly that the 2.5 kilometres should be mandatory, and only real exceptions that based on topography, I would argue, should go within the 2.5 kilometres But I really think we have to strengthen that because, frankly, you know, the consequence of this policy is there will be more wind farm developments within Dumfries and Galloway. That's a fact.
If we can bottom out that last bit first, and have Councillor McClung and Tuckfield want to come back in regards to investment. I think. I mean, I'm okay with the fact that if we include the word topography in there as outlined, happy for that to be put in 2.5 kilometres. The exception would be in the case of topography. I think is what you were saying. If everybody else says right, Councillor McClung, then Tuckfield, and then we'll see when we can pick up the points with Derek after that. What we've actually included.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I have absolutely no problem with the recommendations and the observations of the Council. So just to correct the misinformation for Councillor Smith, I am not campaigning against road improvements. As regards the improvements that I mentioned, he brought up the area round about Cairnryan. I didn't. I was just mentioning the facts that the A77 and the A75 within 25 mile have had numerous. There are other areas in the A75 and the 77 that are getting investment.
Thank you. Just very briefly, now that I've remembered to put my card back in after lunch, I also refute what Councillor Smith has said. I most certainly am not saying that I do not support improvements on the A75. Ridiculous suggestion.
Okay, I'll just ask...
Have we all forgot about the A76?
Hold on. I think it's mentioned.
Hold on.
But nothing happens with it.
Steve, I'll just ask you to summarise the bits that you've picked up, please, if that's possible, in regards to the additions that's been made, and then we'll pick that up if you've got. I mean, myself as a title, the fact we should refer the title project should be in there. We've removed the word strongly, page 296, and I think we added topography in to box 17 near the end, but on page 296 again, we've added topography in it. If we could just kind of summarise it, and if there's anything else, done that. Yep. Thanks, Steve.
Chair, do you also want us to strengthen the wording with regard to the 2.5 kilometres to make it clear that we are of the view that they should be essentially exclusion zones?
Councillor Smith, I'll let you come back on that.
With that, my personal view is it should be mandatory, but you know, at the very least, we should be absolutely strengthening that because it is being honest at the moment.
We didn't get a clear definition of what a settlement is. Is that small building groups, so maybe half a dozen units, or are we talking a village? Is that open to interpretation?
That's probably open to interpretation, but we would use the LDP as the guide for that in terms of identifying a settlement hierarchy. So anything that's identified within the LDP would be considered to be a settlement.
What do other members think in regards to what Councillor Smith put forward as a proposal in regards to strengthening the wording around the topography and the total exclusion? Kind of a bit mandatory, but we should. Are we okay with that, or are we against that? We're okay with it? So I'm getting nodded heads, right? Councillor Dempster?
Can we score at the last line on page 288? I mean, it's bad enough trying the A76 fixed without saying you should fix it round about Prestwick Airport. That's hardly helpful for Dumfries and Galloway, unless we've got an airport in Dumfries that I've missed.
I mean, I think, Jim,
there's a hangout
it's not saying that we've got an airport within Dumfries and Galloway.
There's a hangout which it's just a mile up the road to me.
Influence financial getting money coming into the area because you've got Prestwick, you've got Glasgow, you've got Carlisle, and so on and so forth. And there's clear link roads coming through there, one going right up through your particular ward, A76. So I don't know if we should remove that or not.
Well, are we not trying to improve the city of Dumfries and Galloway? Been improving the Prestwick Airport surround of the Carlisle, you know, hardly help us.
I mean, I think that would have a negative effect on building the case as we go forward, personally. But,
how?
Because we're excluding. If you're saying take away, the airport has been a point to attract funding towards Dumfries and Galloway. Of course, it's part of it, even though it's out with a region. So. Councillor Carson?
Chair, my reading of it is that, you know, the A75 and A77 are recognised as important routes, and by saying the A76 should be included in there, it's justifying it by suggesting that one of the reasons is Prestwick Airport. I think it's just adding weight to the A76 being regarded as significant. It starts in Dumfries and goes all the way up there. I think it's just adding weight to the fact that there should be some significance placed in the A76, unless I'm missing what Councillor Dempster's suggesting.
It'd be easy to misunderstand, but that was my understanding of it, John.
I'm glad Finlay said that at the finish up, because we've had the A76 route action plan that Alistair's familiar with. 9 projects, yinned in 10 years. And we should improve the A76 to improve connectivity to the airport, no support development in and around the airport, so that folk can actually get from Dumfries to the airport. Now that's logical. But no supporting the development of the airport.
No, that's not what it says, no. Okay. Okay.
Okay, what?
Okay, I think we're happy with as it stands.
Who's happy with it stands?
Well, I certainly am. Councillor Carson.
You're only the chairman, you don't know the report.
You've not made any. Did he make a motion
I
here?
that we remove the last line if you need me to say that. I thought consensus was the name of the game here, not just what the chairman liked.
Councillor Dempster, I'll not be offended by that remark. You've said facts.
I'll not be offended by the fact you ignored me completely. But I still put up the proposal. I have a motion that says we remove the last line or amend it to read the A76 is improved to assist connectivity to the airport.
Read that again, Jim, please. So you're looking at the A76 to assist, did you say, connectivity to the airport? How does that read?
The last one, it said it should feature more prominently in future planning, particularly in relation to improvements in connectivity to the airport, or words to that effect. I'm sure Alistair or Derek or even yourself are better at maybe wording it than me. I just don't want to see the focus on the airport. I want to see it on the route to the airport, which will help the Dumfries and Galloway people to get to the airport because the road's so bad.
Okay, Steve, if you could just pick up on that, please, thank you.
Maybe as we wrote this, I should try to explain what we actually had in mind. This is not simply about accessibility to the airport for people travelling. It's also about business links and about providing opportunities to benefit from the future expansion of Prestwick. So it's also about access for employment opportunities, for business opportunities, should Prestwick Airport grow in the future and attract more airport-related activities. That would be a benefit to this region.
Well, they didn't get there without crashing because the road's so bad, which is why I'm saying we need the road featured as a link, as a proper modern-day link to the airport. I accept that there's a business a basis for your statement, but what it seems to do is add a throwaway line of the A76 and then focus on improvements at and around the airport. Now that's for East Ayrshire Council to deal with. I'm quite sure they'll be promoting that as best they can. And what I'm saying is we should be trying to look after the travelling public in the Dumfries and Galloway, whether it be on a commercial basis or an individual basis.
Last word on this.
Jim, the way I'm reading it is that it's suggesting it's really important to keep the A76 up, in particular to propose developments that people from Dumfries and Galloway would want to go to for business or for travel. It's not suggesting that there's a priority placed on the developments around the airport. It's based on how important A76 could become because of proposed developments around the airport. So I think it's there to strengthen.
I accept. I mean, Mr. Rogers put forward a case there. He explained exactly what that paragraph means. Potentially, if you could beef that up, maybe get a chance to listen back to what's been said here, beef that up in accordance. I take it you're happy with the response you got from Mr. Rogers. He explained it very thoroughly.
No.
In your head at the time.
No, I'm not happy. Don't make decisions for me, Chairman. I am not happy because I interpreted it in a way that tells me We are focusing on development at and around the airport. That's how I read it. Now, if the layperson, because I consider myself to be a layperson, reads it the same way, or if Scottish ministers read it the same way, then it'll no deliver the impact that it should. And what Colin has put it very, what's the word, subtly, it just needs tweaked. I want to see a reference to the A76 in Dumfries and Galloway being upgraded to support the improvement in the airport. I'm no criticising, see what I'm saying is I read that and I don't like the way it reads. That's no complicated. And if Steve's willing to amend it ever so slightly to satisfy somebody that live and work and travel in the A76, that would be fine.
What you just explained there, what you want is exactly what it says when I read it. So I don't understand where you're coming from. So we'll finish it at that. Councillor Prentice, then we'll either put down a motion or we'll agree.
Chair, I can partly see what Jim is saying. I mean, if you do read that sentence beginning the A76 corridor, there's no mention in there of any benefits along the 76 corridor which would accrue in Dumfries and Galloway. All we're mentioning there is that it's a connection between Scotland and the north of England to Prestwick Airport. If it had even said this could help businesses in Sanquhar, Kirkconnell and God knows where all up in that valley, I think that would maybe allay Jimmy's
If we could put that in the context, I mean, that's for a local development plan, surely. If we could, unless I'm missing it, put that in context. This is the national plan framework. This is the plan for Scotland, not for Dumfries and Galloway. And it's trying to bolt something on, and that's, I see exactly what's happened there, bolting something on of a national level that can help Dumfries and Galloway attract funding or resource. I mean, that's my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I am going to bring this to a conclusion. I've had enough. Councillor Smith?
I mean, I can't believe we're getting, I mean, it's going to get ignored by the Scottish Government, whatever we put in, let's be honest, but it's a phrase, particularly in relation to proposed development. Clearly what Councillor Dempster's doing is he's interpreting that to mean proposed development of the A76 near the airport, as opposed to proposed developments near the airport. That's you can understand why that would be interpreted like that. The worry is that what we're advocating here is improvements to the A76 near the airport, as opposed to improvements to the A76 in our region. That's the interpretation, and I can understand why he's interpreting that. So it seems to me that a slight tweaking of the last sentence to make it clear we're talking about the A76 between Dumfries and Prestwick Airport, not improving the A76 just at Prestwick Airport. That seems to be where the concern lies. I think a minor tweak of that sentence and then we can move on, I would have thought. You know, it's
the only flaw in your argument, your comments that the A76 goes to Gilmartin.
Yeah, I know, but
it doesn't go to the airport, that's the only thing.
Proposed, well, Southern basically is what he's saying, near the airport. Kilmarnock, the last time I checked, wasn't that far from Prestwick Airport. You know, but a minor tweak, Chair, and then we can maybe move on.
I'll take... Okay, that's right. Wait, we've got that tweak. Thanks very much for that. Anything else that we've asked for anybody else that was... Oh, right then. Item 18, which is consultative draft local development plan supplementary guidance, Dumfries Conservation Area, character appraisal and forestry and woodland strategy. Director, anything else to add to the report?
Nothing else to add, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Carson, then Mill.
They're quite. There's some of them quite heavy documents, but the one in particular, I'd like to ask that there's some attention paid to the news that there's thousands of hectares of larch are going to have to be removed from the forestry due to this fungus that they've got. During the consultation, you know, it could have quite a dramatic effect on some of the tourist areas, because I believe that the Seven Stains and a lot of the amenity planting around visitor centres, whatever, in Galloway Forest Park and whatever, were planted with larch. I wonder whether, when this goes out to consultation, there'll be some consideration to the impact on tourism, but also the impact on the additional felling and transport of these dead trees, if you like, over the next couple of years.
Chair, simply to, in response to that, we've been working very closely with the Forestry Commission Scotland on this document. They're actually a core member of the steering group that's developed the strategy, and they're very well aware of those issues that you've just been referring to. The intention of this particular strategy document is to set a kind of long-term vision for the future of our planting and our planting areas, but certainly operationally, Forestry Commission are very well aware of those issues, but we'll certainly reinforce that message back to them.
Okay, I don't think I have any. Councillor Smith? Oh, sorry, I had Mail. Sorry, I did Councillor Mail then, Smith.
Yeah, Chair, it's also on forestry. It's on page 441, 27 or 441B4, 522, and the very last paragraph. The timber production in the region is continuing to rise and is therefore likely to place ongoing and greater demand on the public road network. Chair, I don't think that's anywhere near strong enough. We already have roads in our forestry routes that are almost impassable, and they're getting worse by the year, and I really think we need to find some way of strengthening what this says, but also how we're going to lobby to get the funding in place, be it through Europe or government, to actually address this issue, because it's getting worse by the year in a lot of areas, and if it increases again, then I can see us actually having to close some of our minor roads because they will be unpassable. So I really need to strengthen that up and say what we're going to do to try and resolve the issue.
Director?
Yeah, there's no doubt that timber harvesting will increase. We have a very good relationship with the industry through our agreed routes map. We try and sustain the network with various regimes of moving timber, either 1 lorry an hour or 2 lorries an hour. It works very, very successful. It's been so successful that we've managed to spread that right through Scotland, north of England, as far as Yorkshire and the whole of Wales, in my role as chair of the Timber Transport Forum. But funding is crucial, and we still have the Strategic Timber Transport Fund, and as we move towards the end of the current spending review period, we certainly nationally will be, and as a council, will be lobbying the government to continue that funding.
Well, Chair, can this be beefed up, or when it comes back, could those comments be placed in? Because I really think it is vitally important. We've seen the damage this winter. The number of roads that the forestry run along that are almost impassable now is growing in significance. And I really think we've got to be hammering this one as hard as we possibly can. And I mean, I take up what Mr. Speedy says about 1 and 2 wagons. I regularly get reports of 4 and 6 wagons following one another down some roads. And the roads just ain't going to recover if that's happening. And so we need some sort of stricter regime in place.
Yeah, I'll certainly look at that again. But my information, where I sit, is our current way of operating is fairly successful. There will be problems, there is no doubt. There's certainly problems during the winter when the roads are under frost and there's the potential of frost heave, etc. But generally, the way we're operating with the forestry industry, in particular the transport, is fairly successful. But I'll review that and I'll speak to Councillor Mayo and get the exact location so we can get these investigated.
Councillor Smith, then Prentice.
Thanks, Chair. It's obviously in relation to the Dumfries conservation. I mean, it's just really to say actually it's a really, really good piece of work. I mean, it's obviously a long time in coming, but I think it's a tremendous piece of work and a lot of really good positive direction in the document, and hopefully it will be used in a practical basis in years to come when it comes to actual planning. We won't see a continuation of some of the developments that we've seen in Dumfries, and we'll be giving developers a really good, clear guidance and planning officers some real ammunition, if you like, to make sure that we get the right type of development within Dumfries. I think it's a tremendous piece of work. I would, just to avoid a national incident, I would suggest maybe we tweak a couple of photographs of the Burn statue proposals in there just before it goes out to public consultation. It's slightly worrying that on page 334 we could only find 5 photographs of traditional shop fronts in Dumfries, and we've got a blank space at number 6. Maybe that actually says what's happened to the high street in recent years, where some of the shop fronts, not naming any betting shops in particular, but are really quite horrendous, and we need to try and tackle that problem as soon as possible. I do think though we should take a slightly more proactive route when it comes to the consultation on this. It does seem to imply in the document that it will get put in the library, and if you want, you've got 6 weeks to go to the library and read it. I think that we should be actually trying our best to maybe send this out to interested parties, things like community councils, local business organisations, actually be more proactive, because actually it is a positive piece of work, and we should be getting that across to people that we want them to comment on it, and we want them to feed back, and I'm sure there'll be some specifics that people will come back on, and we should actually try to be a bit more proactive to get people's comments rather than saying you had 6 weeks to respond if you bother to find it on the website or the library. I think that we should be proactive, because it is a really positive piece of work, and I look forward to seeing the responses to that consultation when they come in.
That's appreciated, the comments in regards to the level of work and the level of actual report. It's really good. I would agree with that entirely. In regards to being more proactive with consultation, what can we do about that?
Chair, certainly we can take those comments on board as part of the consultation process, and it would certainly be our intention to engage with the relevant heritage bodies and community councils and so on in taking this document forward. With regard to the photographs, this is obviously a draft document and will now be updated as a consequence of decisions taken earlier on today with regard to Burn Statue Square, for example. And once the document goes right the way through the process, then it would get reformatted and designed to be a promotional style document, which will be looking to draw people's attention to the qualities and the merits within Dumfries Town Centre and Dumfries Conservation Area.
Just a small comment before I bring George in, is clearly we'll get that updated, the photograph on page 354, but the small bit of print underneath that says Burn Square redesign a layout proposal. Provost will jump up and down if you don't include Castle Street in that. He's constantly going on about it because it is Castle Street, so if we could include that as well, if that's possible. George, Councillor Prentice.
Yep, thanks, Chair. Just to go back to what Dennis was saying about the timber transport, I sit in the West Group for timber transport, and I can only commend what these guys are actually trying to achieve along with the council, because I mean the map which is produced is purely a voluntary situation. We can't force these guys to go onto different roads. Everything is done on a voluntary basis. These guys are paying their dues as far as tax is concerned. There is absolutely nothing to stop them going along roads which we don't think are fit to go along. But I would say that any time I have met with these guys, they bend over backwards to try and do their best for the roads. I don't think they're doing anything. I mean, there are occasions when things maybe go wrong, but I find them quite rare, and I would commend these guys.
I mean, I've found myself that if you bring issues up to the relevant people, it's addressed fairly quickly. But we do certainly have issues. Councillor, well, you want to respond to anything there? No, but no, Councillor Mail then.
Chair, it was actually more the condition of the roads I was concerned about. As I say, we do get complaints about certain things, but it is the condition of the roads that concerns me. The roads are not fit for purpose. Half of them are built on peat bogs. We don't have the money to do it. When the forests were started in the 1940s, 1950s, there was money for the old Dumfries and Galloway Council at that time to put the money in place, because the guy that built half these forests told me about it, and it was spent on other things. The job was never done. What we need to be doing is lobbying for the proper money to get the proper job done so that we don't have problems on the road, because the forests are here to stay, the work's got to be done, it's important to Dumfries and Galloway, but the roads are no fit to take it, and that's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, Councillor Dempster.
It's much the same point, Chair. We all hear, us that are in the rural hinterland, we hear about these huge lorries thundering through communities and disrupting what we call peaceful life, and George Prentice is right. They pay their road tax, they pay their insurance, they're entitled to use that road if they wish. But we should maybe be trying to extract community benefit from them and invest in the communities. There's no reason why we should be item specific with wind farms. If there's huge industry as there is going on right across the region, there's no reason why these companies, whether it be the Forestry Commission or whoever, shouldn't contribute in some way to the communities to compensate for the disruption that the transport move causes on a week by week and year by year basis.
Just before I bring the Director in, I'm looking at key actions in regards to acts. Again, on page 4 and 42, the key actions there is the answer to what's been addressed. I think first one is STT1. Continue to support and evolve the existing Timber Transport Group's approach to seek partnership solutions to timber transport pressures, and STT2 is to seek to identify and support long-term strategic solutions to the roads infrastructure to allow ongoing realisation of the downstream economic benefits to timber production in Dumfries and Galloway. And it sounds very much like that's what you're saying, Dennis, in particular. I mean, it sounds like that's part of, is what looking at the answer, but Director, I think you want to come in.
Yeah, I think I have to make a statement, and we've got to remember that this committee is recorded, and there are certain claims being made that you know, as far as I'm concerned, are not accurate. And one is roads fit for purpose. I'm not aware that any of our roads are not fit for purpose. And what we do with the forestry industry is we know the strength of our roads. Our DG First colleagues who do the local network management understand the strength of a road, and it's fit for purpose for 1 lorry an hour. And that's what we try and manage. If you have roads in your ward that are in that condition, then I want to see them, because that's not the information that I'm getting. And regarding wagons, timber wagons running about our communities, the whole issue that we're trying to solve is to protect these communities through the Strategic Timber Transport Fund. And we're building off-road routes to bypass these communities. So everything's being done. What we've got to remember at forestry is a key economic driver for this region. And we have to work with the industry to ensure that everybody benefits. And if you have specific issues, let me know. I never hear from you, Councillor Dempster, from 1 week to another about forestry. If you have an issue, let me know and I'll solve it.
Oh, you're not picking at me. What I said was we hear from communities about these lorries thundering through, and you do know, because it's the Dunsker area where they're always complaining that the guys don't take the route that's agreed, or some of them don't. You know that. You don't need me to come to you every week to tell you. What I'm saying is, other colleagues have told you from my word, and I'm just rehearsing the fact that that's what we know and understand happens. But what I went on to say was they're entitled to use these roads because they pay their road tax and insurance, and we can't stop them.
Right. Chair, I would be happy to invite Mr Speedio anytime to come and take a run up to Haslemere with me. Delighted to invite him to do that.
Right, we'll stick to the committee report that's in front of us. At 2.1, we're asked to agree for public consultation, of the new supplementary guidance on the Dumfries Conservation Area, Character Appraisal Appendix 1, Dumfries and Galloway Forestry and Woodland Strategy Appendix 2, 2.2 to receive a report back to this committee with the outcome of the public consultation along with the proposed changes being before adopted to supplementary planning guidance, which is absolutely essential. Just as I think we've picked up on everything that was said there in regards to Burn Statute in particular. I'm thinking was my point. There was other points up brought up, then they'll be added to that, and we'll see the report back in October, November time, I would imagine. Councillor Carson.
Thanks, Chair. Just very briefly, can I ask that if will there be or is any impact assessment on the larch disease and what effect it could have on the increase in timber transport? You know, there is part of that report that mentions the likes of Kirkmabrek and whatever. I understand that after a certain period, these trees are not able to be processed in the sawmills that we've got in this area. Will there be any impact assessment made to you know, the increase in the volume of timber actually leaving Dumfries and Galloway, and whether we need to look at the likes of Kirkmabrek quarry and whatever for extracting it, but also the impact that there may be on our main tourist areas, including the likes of Seven Stains, whether there will be an effect if they've got to remove these trees within the next 18 months. It could completely obliterate what is one of our major tourist attractions. You know, Seven Stains is lovely, but because you're cycling through trees, if the trees are no longer there, you know, what impact is it going to have on the investment they've had recently at Corrochtree and whatever? If there was going to be something significant, I'd like to come back to this committee so we can look at what the council can do to mitigate it.
We'll certainly undertake to look into that and give you a response. Councillor Carson, yes.
Thank you very much. Item number 19 is the consultation response European Structural Funds Programmes 2014 to 2020. Director, do you have anything to add to this report?
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Members are asked to agree to the consultation document response as detailed in Appendix 1 submitted to the Scottish Government. Okay, no hands up, no responses. Item 20 is consultation response Scottish Rural Development Fund Programme 2014 to 20, Stage 1 initial responses. Director, again, do you have anything to add to this report?
Nothing to add, Chair, at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Members are asked to agree to the consultation document response to be submitted to the Scottish Government as per Appendix 1, as per detailed in Appendix 1. Okay, thanks very much for that. Item 21. We can get there. Which is European funding project applications. Looks like a good news story. Director, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Members are asked to agree that the Head of Economic Development accept any offer of grant from the Scottish Government made in relation to the Business Gateway Plus, Dumfries and Galloway and Youth Employment Scotland Dumfries and Galloway project applications, and 2.2, the recruitment of one full-time administrative support post on a fixed term basis to 31st of March 2015 as detailed in paragraph 3.10. Again, like I say, this looks like a good news story, certainly. We've got money coming in and we're being asked to accept it, but Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I was kind of wondering when we were going to get this report, because obviously the scheme itself was announced quite a wee while ago, and obviously, presumably, the Council's already put a bid in that we've not seen, and it was announced certainly by the Scottish Government that we were getting funding, but none of us had actually ever seen what we were getting funding for. So I'd be keen to get a wee bit more information on exactly what the project's going to involve. It says that the application, page 528, is to create 100 job opportunities, including 50 apprenticeships for young people aged 16 to 24. Can you just explain how that will sort of work in practical terms? How will we create these? Is it financial assistance, direct grants to businesses? How exactly is it going to work in practical terms?
Certainly, over to yourself.
Through our employment total access point, through the business liaison service based within economic development, employability and skills team, we'll be the business liaison advisor. Will be going out round local micro and medium-sized businesses, offering the incentive to local employers to recruit from the age bracket.
Sort of direct grant effectively to these organisations, these companies who will effectively take somebody on, we'll provide that direct grant using this funding. That's the...
Yes, it's a half wage incentive, so the employer would pay half the wage and the incentive would cover the other half of the young person's wage for 6 months, with a view to hopefully sustaining the job beyond that.
Don't have any other speakers or anybody else looking to come in? Can we agree as per the two recommendations outlined? Item 22. For that, item 22 is Industrial Communities Alliance Annual Conference. We're asking for Councillor Wood to go down to Wakefield for that on the 19th to the 20th of September. Anyone otherwise minded? I would move that he does go. Okay, thanks for that. We have one other item of business. We'll have it tabled. I think we'll have it tabled. We'll have a 5-minute break, come back, and we'll consider it at that point. Thank you. We don't need a break. I'll no matter about a break. If we just sit back down, if I can just, unless somebody requests a break, we'll just give a couple of minutes in and we'll read away. I'll try and outline. We've got a request from a local MP initially in regards to representation at the Scottish Affairs Select Committee in regards to power outages or power cuts, in other words. It's Mr. Speedy, our director, certainly going down to that. It's tomorrow at 2:30 in the afternoon, but the request was made by the leader for myself to go as well. So I've said I'm fine with that. I could go to that, and it would be a joint effort between both Mr. Speedy and myself in regards to that. So, but you can look at it, consider it, and come back with your views. It's pretty much asking for, I think, the train ticket to be there and back tomorrow. That's as much as what would happen. Be an early shift away and a late night coming back. So that's what it's looking for. I think it's for members to decide themselves, but give us all a couple of minutes, wait for members to come back.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Members okay with that? Okay, thanks very much. We'll report that back. Councillor Ogilvie?
Yeah, I mean, I fully appreciate that the director and that's going, this is all to do with the power lines coming down, which is a utility issue. I mean, you could insist that they put trace heating in or something like that, or you could even campaign for a nuclear power station to replace Chattlecross 1, which would help with the load in this area. I don't know how far you want to go with this. I mean, the other side of that is what we had to do to mitigate the power being off to help the people. And I know there's a lot of, and we all thank the people. And so that's the evidence of sort of assuming that you're going to be given. The utilities obviously would have to improve their infrastructure. So either the pylons are stronger or they have some sort of trace heating. Trace heating is just a wee heating thing that heats up the cable, stops it freezing, something like that. But certainly, if you can campaign for a Chattel Cross 2, you know, I might vote for you, Ian.
Number 7. It's. I mean, I think that potential for myself to go. I appreciate everybody allowing me to go in this circumstance. Is that some things I'll probably put across at Mrs. Speedy. Politically, Mrs. Speedy, on behalf of the council, that is, couldn't possibly put across. So, but Mr. Crichton, you can kind of clarify on that.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the points are well made. Clearly, it is about the power outage, and a key point of the debate will be around how we dealt with the power companies. But we've also had confirmation that they're also very keen as a committee to find out how we as a council reacted to the bad weather in March specifically, and indeed what measures were put in place to both clear roads, but also to look after vulnerable people. And clearly, they're looking to learn lessons from that, and therefore, that's the basis of the inquiry tomorrow.
No further business. Thanks everybody very much, members and officers, for today's effort. Thank you.